And we're live here to talk about the election that might be called on Sunday. I don't know. Maybe Daniel knows. I didn't ask him yet.
Yeah, Mark
But
Carney and I are pretty close friends. We met at we have a common friend. My friend Ghislaine. So we're flying on a jet, Jeff's jet, and she's like, "Yo, this guy Mark's pretty sick. Check out this out." And he had this money printer on the plane, so he was just like printing money, and then we were just, it's a whole thing. No,
making it rain all over
yeah,
Mark's
continue.
campaign.
Yeah.
But Mark Carney apparently wants to go for an election on Sunday. Like 4 days ago, I'd say maybe that's an okay idea. Like after the news cycle he's had, I'm not sure if it's such a smart idea right now for Carney to want the election ASAP. If anything, he should probably want to put it off a little bit. Oh my goodness, I have to respond to this because we have Arctic Ian saying hi, Claypool from Nunavut. We have somebody from Nunavut watching. Thank you.
We
I
have,
have one. We have one.
we have one, which was the same amount of people from Nunavut who paid attention to Mark Carney when he came in. Did you give Mark Carney his Nunavut sweater, Arctic Ian? Ian, did you knit that sweater for Mark Carney?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm jealous of that sweater. I think we all know that we want that one.
Yeah.
But so thank you for someone saying I'm the Dwight Schrute of Canadian political commentary. Hopefully that means that's a good thing. But anyways, so election coming up, a lot of stupid stuff to get to, and let's start with this stupid thing. So, do you know who Patrick Brett Davis is? Daniel?
Patrick Bet David. Yeah, David. This is the guy who just brought on Andrew Tate to be like sex trafficking women. Oh, it's the Matrix.
Yeah.
So after bringing on a sex trafficker, self-admitted sex trafficker, he then had Maxime Bernier. Or first, he demanded that Pierre Poilievre came on his show. This is Patrick Bet David, and then
I want to see if I can maybe even find that original post. We don't really need to do it, but he had this whole like clip where he's like, he's screwing it all up. Donald Trump, Javier Milei, when they were getting elected, they were doing podcasts all over the place. They were doing media all over the place. It's like, do I think that Poilievre should be doing more media? Sure. At the same time, no, not with you. Like, no, don't be on the show with him. Like, do something smart or intelligent. Yeah. And
yeah,
so,
like do JJ McCullough's podcast or something. Do a Canadian big podcast, like, do that. Come down for like, have an hour of more unedited, like you can do that. Like, but yeah, don't go on Patrick Bet David. Don't go on some like American, like, oh, like this guy who popped on the scene like a couple years ago and then like started interviewing people randomly.
He literally bought his way on.
Sorry?
He literally bought his way on. He's just a millionaire who ended up basically paying for a podcasting studio and started paying people to come on to his show to make him look big. And so now he sees himself as like a big tastemaker in politics everywhere. The amount of people who watch his show in Canada are probably like 5% of his audience at best, which he has to be absolutely hitting it out of the park for that 5% to be worth Pierre Poilievre coming on. And somebody even pointed out to me like, well, it'd be a really big show if Poilievre went on. I'm like, yeah, because Poilievre could just fart out a video on a channel with 0 subscribers and it would do well because people are interested in watching him. Going on with Patrick Bet David, who just had Andrew Tate on, is stupid. But now, because Patrick Bet David is a spurned lover, he has had on Maxime Bernier. He says, I respect any candidate who is not afraid to sit down.
No, not afraid. All cap locks, Wyatt.
I'm sorry. I respect any candidate who is not afraid of sitting down with anyone. Trump won in 2024 because he was fearless. No, it's because his platform was better. Kamala was afraid and asked for questions in advance. Just had a great sit down with Maxime Bernier from Canada. Fearless and extremely impressive.
Bernier, remember when we interviewed Maxime Bernier and he asked for questions in advance?
Oh, yeah, he does ask for questions in advance because he didn't want us asking about the party constitution without being prepared for it, and he prepared by lying. He said that, oh yes, so of course we're gonna get a new constitution ready to roll, and this was before the 2021 federal election. This is like mid 2021. Had all the time in the world to even do it before then. Since then, still hasn't done it. At some point, I stopped like, oh, but his platform's so good. Have you guys read the platform? Have you read the PPC platform, Daniel? Isn't it so good?
I remember like writing some of it back in 2017. It doesn't mean like like, yeah, it's all gone. Like, but the PPC doesn't stand for anything it did back in 2017, like, or 2019. Like, yeah, like, okay, lower taxes, less migration. Okay, fine. On that, but like, what is the PPC principle even about? Like, and most, and like, I love the PPC, like, PPC has a problem now because like they're mixed with like the holier than thou super Canadianness, but also they need to appeal to like fringe online right wing stuff. Like, so you're gonna have this really hyper Puritan Canadian push in the PPC right now, and this 51st state push in the PPC, and they're gonna come to odds. But it's not really gonna matter because Maxime Bernier is not really gonna campaign for prime minister. But like, good for Maxime Bernier. Like, this is what he should be doing. Listen, if you're not trying to become prime minister of Canada, if you're not trying to win a seat, you should be trying to grift. And if you're going to go to grift, then you should be on American podcast networks. Like, Bernier should be doing Patrick McDavid. If you can do Joe Rogan, more power to him. Go on Theo Vaughn. Go on all the American, like, pseudo-intellectual conservatives who know nothing about Canadian politics. And you can just say, you know, Trudeau's an idiot. The COVID was bad. I am very based. Blue, 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 blue. But, like, you have a week before people figure out that you can't quite speak English all that well, and Americans don't have a tolerance for a French Canadian accent. And then, you know, like, I remember Dave Rubin interviewed Maxime Bernier. He was like, "Will he be the next prime minister of Canada?"
In 2019, that wasn't even when they were getting their 5%. That was them getting their like 1.9%. Is this going to be Canada's next prime minister? And the idea anyone's giving these guys money, they aren't even door knocking in Beauce. The second best riding for them in 21, it was their best riding in 19. He hasn't posted a single photo. Hey, I'm out door knocking, helping tell people the good news. No, he's not doing anything. And that's the thing that frustrates me. I help the new Blue Party in Ontario, and I actually don't care about the vote splitting narrative. It doesn't mean anything. If you fail
I'm still on this. Earn people's votes. If the PPC earned your vote more than the Conservative Party did, it's not being split, right? The PPC earned that vote, or the Conservatives effed it up. Like,
you only end up there's maybe a couple ridings where somebody went in and then they heard, oh, this guy seems like the more of the conservative, and they don't understand how the system works, and they do it. That's very rare. Like, council races are where vote splitting happens, or vote splitting happens in like Ontario when a bunch of fake conservative parties run as an alternative to the new Blue Party just to mess with the environment to make it seem like it's dysfunctional. But actual vote splitting is very hard to come by in federal politics. And so I don't blame the PPC for getting whatever vote they get. My problem is they don't even try. They don't even try. And they're wasting the time of their donors and their limited amount of volunteers pretending like they're eventually going to get something done. I even had one PPC guy saying, well, people know that the PPC is eventually going to be the new mainstream in Canada, or the future mainstream. Like, you're basically just saying you're not even going to try this election. Why isn't the mainstream now? You've had how many years to try
Wyatt, mainstream? You don't know. We don't need people in the PPC. If anyone doesn't know about the PPC right now, they don't deserve the PPC. And, you know, what are all those fringe lunatics in the Dagalon, you know, yelling about, like, oh, we don't even need voting anyway. All right, I say we move off the PPC because it's the most irrelevant topic to the Canadian election. Okay, we have King of Canada, His Lordship Marcus Carney. Lord Carney is likely to declare an election this Sunday and have a snap election. So we can have some debate on this. I think it's a good move for Carney to call an election as soon as he can. Carney's never going to get more popular than this. Every time he opens his mouth, disaster runes. As soon as people figure out, like, they can sell him as a smart businessman who knows the way the world works, Harvard educated, whereas Trudeau was a buffoon. Here's a very serious person. But they need to sell him before people figure out that a global banker is not the same as a businessman. This guy's never, like, he's not a leader of man. He's like someone who moves numbers around on a spreadsheet and prints money, and has never really done anything of value in his life, and has made, you know, he's just entrenched in these global technocratic institutions who purport wacky, you know, usually environmentally based left-wing ideas. And that, once people see that for how it is, like, he's going to go down. So I think his best thing is ride the honeymoon, be Prime Minister of Canada, go around as Prime Minister, fly off to Europe. This is like the perfect thing. Fly to Europe, shake hands with the English and French, some of your old contacts from your European banking days, pull in some favors, talk about whatever, talk bullshit about, make people see you as a leader of Canada who's dealing with France. And then come back and call an election when your numbers will never be higher because you have the perfect scenario where you can run against Donald Trump instead of Pierre Poilievre. That would be if I was a liberal, that's what I would go with.
I would say, and as of more than 2 days ago, more than 48 hours ago, I would agree that would be the move for Carney. Call the election early. You're as popular as you're ever going to be. The problem is after I think the Trump Fox News problem dropped, now there is this very obvious attack line the Conservatives had. He just had a really bad week with all of his stumbling and falling apart in press conferences, him contradicting himself on the carbon tax, saying, well, we do need one and we're not going to be able to trade into the EU. And so that's how he's going to justify increasing the industrial carbon tax even more. And there's just been a few other things. Him bringing on that Century Initiative guy, like WOW or Century Institute or whatever. That is such a bad move. He brought on a guy who wants to get the Canadian population to 100 million by the year 2100. That's insane. The amount of gains in population that they're going to have to make per year to do that are unsustainable and obviously would ruin the country. I think he just needed to wait. And again, we're saying this as conservative people who don't want to see the Liberals win at all. At the same time, if I was Carney's advisor, I would say, okay, we've had a rough week. Let's wait a month. Let's get you signing a couple things. Let's get you trying to maybe even work in the legislature, show that the Conservatives won't work with you and you're willing to make it Team Canada and they weren't supporting Team Canada, and then call the election. I think he needs a little, this sounds even shallow. He needs a bit more B-roll. He doesn't have enough B-roll footage of him walking around looking confident and signing stuff. He's been to France. He's been with the King. And then he was with the Premier of Nunavut. There's not really great footage here for him to run with.
That's a good point. So I will...
To be fair, the risk of my plan is that if you slip farther and all the rot starts setting in, it could be even worse, and all this stuff doesn't matter because it's too inside baseball.
Exactly. I think you're trying to thread a needle. Listen, if your plan works, right? But the problem is, you think his team is Team Trudeau. How long can you go before Stephanie Gabibliot goes, we must have eco-terrorism, I'm going to climb the CN Tower, and then I'm going to jump on and blow up all of Alberta. Right?
It sounds like Stephen Guilbeault plus Melanie Jolie.
Yeah. And Melanie Jolie is going to be around the problem with the climate is Israel. And we want a ceasefire now on a climate ceasefire. We're flying to Europe for a ceasefire on the climate because it's really important to us in Ukraine. So while Mark Carney might be capable of being I am from Goldman Sachs, Harvard, business, whatever, eventually all these, you're head of a pack of ding dongs, and all these Christopher Freeland's just going to twitch, right? And you're going to get that again. And then people are like, oh shit, these are the Liberals. So
that's why I like my PSYOP I was running against the left, where I started calling Mark Carney Mark's Carney, and they played into it perfectly, because every time I'd start doing that, a bunch of them would start arguing with me, and I would start describing his actual resume that they usually won't admit to, and they're like, well, yeah, that's true, but that's not communism. I'm like, yeah, but you just admitted that he is in fact a central planner, that he is an economic organizer. He does not actually like the free market. But he's not a communist. I'm like, yeah, it's a hyperbolic label to get you to admit to the other thing that you wouldn't have normally admitted to, that he is a very big government Keynesian economist who believes in government growth of the economy, not private growth of the economy. I just want to get to this question quick. They say, National Telegraph, when do you think we are going to see the poles fall back to earth? I assume that's what you meant, so I was interpreting a bit. I think that we're probably going to be seeing that in a week or two. The problem is that the polls I like are innovative research and abacus data. It's not just because they're the ones that still show the Conservatives up. I've been calling it for a few months now that they're my favorites, because what they showed is when Trudeau was swapped out, one, they weren't the weirdo polls like Ecos and Angus Reid, who when Trudeau was really unpopular in the middle of December, Abacus never put the Liberals down to like 16% or down to 17 like some of these other ones did. That's too low. They would show gradual falls and gradual raises. And so even in Abacus, the Liberals are only down by 4 points, but I think that's realistic because the main demographic the Liberals have lost in the past 9 years are middle-aged working class men. Those people will never go back. Whereas the people the Liberals are currently winning are mostly older boomer voters and women. And then even those people, when you look at the polls, they're less certain that they are going to stick with the Liberals than the conservative voters are sure that they're going to stick with them. So that's why right now, after all these gaffes, with Trump saying, yeah, I'd like to work with the Liberals more than the conservatives, I think you're going to see a bit of a contraction. And if Innovative, which had the conservatives +6 in their last one, and Abacus had them +4 in their last one, if they were right, we could quite easily start seeing +8s and +7s and +9s again. And that's when we're in a more comfortable majority territory. But yeah.
Here's the problem I see from like take the polls out. Here's like my
and that's to answer this question also, which is a super chat by Victoria P 279. Thank you for that. So the ones we trust, Abacus and Innovative Research.
So what I see as a problem for the Conservatives in this election is in terms of messaging and like the same thing. It's good that Trump said Carney would be easier to deal with because Liberals are weaker, right? Conservatives are stronger. It undermines the Canada strong narrative they're going on there. Ultimately, right now, this election is, and looks like it will be, a vote of who do you hate more, Donald Trump or Justin Trudeau? And if you hate Donald Trump more, the Liberals want to get you. And if you hate Justin Trudeau more, the Conservatives will get you. The Conservatives, instead of trying to, because Trudeau's gone. So instead of, I think they're making a mistake by not trying to switch this onto issues where they can win, right? They should take a huge victory lap on Mark Carney taking their housing thing. They should run energy independence as Canadian independence. They should run on this mass migration stuff. They should run as like restoring law and order and crime. And they have to make the question of the election is, do you want to change the last 10 years of Canada? That has to be the election question because
absolutely, you run on a big vision. Your campaign can't be, you want this tinkered with? Because no one's voting on tinkering. They're voting on, are you delusional enough to like what's going on, or do you want something absolutely different?
Yeah, and right now it's sort of who do you hate more, Donald Trump or Mark Carney? Or Justin Trudeau. And the Conservatives kept trying to be like Trudeau, just like Trudeau, just like Trudeau. Carbon tax Carney, carbon tax Justin, carbon tax Christia, right? Trudeau, and then Trump. And you can't have that with Trump coming on the airwaves every 4 to 8 hours, threatening to annex the country.
And that's where I actually like Poilievre's pivot on the carbon tax. I didn't like the first couple days where he's like, oh no, the carbon tax is still around because he only turned the rate of the consumer side to 0. And it's like, okay, yeah, are you right? Sure, but I don't think you have the 45 minutes of time with each individual in order to explain, yes, it's gone, but based on his press statements of the fact he was supporting the carbon tax up to 5 seconds ago, he has the ability in 6 months, once you're not noticing, to start turning it back up and assuming that you're going to be too stupid to notice. Like, that's just, so saying that he also wants to get rid of the industrial carbon tax creates a good patriotism trap for Mark Carney. Mark Carney, by refusing to get rid of the industrial carbon tax and even saying, well, Europe said we have to do it, or Vietnam said we have to do it, or whoever, or the UN said we have to do it. Now Poilievre can say, well, I'm Canada first. I don't care what, I don't care what.
Europe is buying fucking energy from Russia, you ding dongs.
Yeah.
That's all Russia-India thing.
Yeah, also America doesn't have an industrial carbon tax.
You're buying like refined oil from India. That's all. What oil does India have? Yeah. Russia's. At least, like, listen, I don't, I understand India's neutrality. But if we're going to buy Russian oil, at least do what the Indians do. They buy it cheap because Russia has to sell to them, and then they refine it, and then they sell it at a higher price to the Europeans, who are so morally noble. But where's your carbon tax on that? Or we need a carbon tax to sell energy to the Europeans? No, we don't. We just need to not do the Russians.
The Americans don't have a carbon tax, and they can sell stuff into Europe.
They take the thing. Yeah, this is all.
It's such a like a Mark Carney like getting inside of a dog kennel and saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm trapped." Like he's just climbing into a problem he created and saying, "Oh my goodness, we need it." So that's a great thing. Here's the thing: Conservatives should run on reducing the corporate tax rate, just overall corporate tax. You're going to get hit as the corporate guy anyways. And by the way, the NDP are actually helping you because they're attacking both you and Carney as the corporate guy. So why not be more corporate? And it's not even more corporate. It's just saying, hey, how about let's not shoot our own businesses in the foot? How about let's let them, because everyone intrinsically knows that if your grocery store is paying less taxes, that your grocery prices will go down, or at least they'll basically stay the same for years without having to go back up. So just do it. Just run on something audacious that gets people talking, or else you're always going to be playing catch up on the prime minister who has more of a power to declare he's going to do something and slightly implement it before the election is over. Because that's like they already have the checks dropping in April for the carbon tax rebate and the $250 handouts.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and also like on a emotional thing, the way you want to sell things, you want to take a win. Like think of like just looking at it on the field. Like if the Conservatives try and go like ref, it's not real carbon protection. You can't ref, you can't just sign a document like that. It's not Canada. It's not a parliamentary order. Ref. Come on, it's right. Then you get that. Instead, take the win and say we actually did this. Right.
Yeah. Suddenly they're agreeing with us, and then just play constant clips of them mocking Canadians who think the carbon tax is bad, and then show the stampede of posts the Liberals are not
and
trying
then
to celebrate
in the debate, throw at him and say, listen, we all know my ideas are the best. That's why you guys are taking them. And you're free to do so because I'm a Canadian patriot and these are the best ideas for the country. If you implement them or if I implement them, that's fine. But Parliament shut down and they need to be implemented permanently. And I think Canadians trust me more as the father of these ideas to implement them than you who are implementing them to try and save your failing popularity after destroying the country for the last 10 years.
Yeah. The great thing that another great thing that Poilievre has going for him, honestly, is because you mentioned in the debate, I think that the debate's actually going to be like really significant this election, just simply because he's effectively working with someone who is like a combination of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, very word salad prone, but also far more likely to just completely verbally wreck out and not know what he's talking about. And I think the debate is going to have to be heavily based on Poilievre pitching questions with a twist in them to Carney and having him basically just fumble and fall on his face, not realizing where to take it because he is so risk averse as a speaker that if you throw Donald Trump's name into a question, he legitimately doesn't know what to say because he's so scared of saying anything that seems not anti-Trump. Anyways, I'm going to move on to some super chats because we should probably catch up on them because we actually got some even before the thing started. Thank you, Patch Duress, our legal friend, for the $6.99 super chat. Pre-live super chat for the progressive algorithm. Thank you for feeding the progressive algorithm. Great coverage on Mark Carney and the PPC. Did you see Jimmy Dore interviewing Maxime Bernier the other day? Did he? The fact that I didn't see that probably says something.
Let me go on this now with the PPC. Jimmy Dore is a lefty. Okay, so if the PPC and Jimmy Dore are getting, then they're not the most pure conservative. Like, again, you could interview whoever you want, but like this is my thing with like the PPC purity and check the platform people. Listen, I remember the platform at the beginning. It's very stolidly conservative. Jimmy Dore isn't a conservative. He's just like aligns with the heterodox view on COVID. That doesn't make people conservatives.
Yeah, he's a socialist.
And he's an outright socialist lunatic. Yeah, and he's like anti-interventionalist, which I guess co-ops with like a section of the online right. But in no way, shape, or form is Jimmy Dore any type of conservative just because he was like so far kind of on the left that he ended up on the right on some issues because he disagreed with the left on COVID, which like fine that you could like, okay, you could say he was right about COVID and everyone else was wrong. Like I'm not taking him away from that. Like so were we. But it doesn't mean then we're all conservatives because we were right about COVID. So.
And he literally left the Young Turks, which are already lefty social progressives and fiscal like socialists effectively. And he left because they weren't willing to back his force the vote movement on trying to make Democrats in Congress vote for Medicare for all policies so he could primary the ones who weren't in favor of it. Like that's who Jimmy Dore is. And yeah, I respect maybe Jimmy Dore on certain issues, but again, the fact that the PPC will go after anybody that Poilievre is even in a 1 kilometer radius of because that person's not the most conservative person on the planet, but then they'll talk to outright socialist demonstrates where their standards are, and their standards are no standards. But moving on to another $13.99 super chat from Patch Dress. Thank you, Patch Dress. However, I couldn't take Bernier seriously because the party doesn't seem serious. Like you mentioned, it's sad Nigel Farage's Reform Party seemed to be suffering from the same leader-centric problems like PPC. On this, I actually recommend people should go check out Sargon of Akkad's channel. I know he's mostly associated with the Lotus Eaters these days, but he has a great video or a couple videos now on the Rupert Lowe situation. If any of you follow UK politics, do you know about this?
Yeah, like I've seen it. Like Rupert Lowe. This is again the reform coming in, getting some power, and then not being able to be as puritanic, as pure right wing as they said they could. But I agree that like
Rupert
what's
Lowe
point having a
had a
reform party
point.
if you can't talk about deporting people?
Yeah, the thing is like Rupert Lowe saying, yeah, all these mostly Pakistani grooming gangs in the UK, not only should the perpetrators be deported, but anyone who in their communities fully knew about it and said nothing should also be deported, which, you know, I can't find anything wrong with that. You're effectively complicit in a decades-long crime ring, and you decide to not even like tip somebody off. You can send an anonymous report so that the police can bash down a door. It's not like you have to commit to sitting on the stand and like getting a shot taken at you. And I've heard it's mostly like a personality thing with Nigel Farage not liking people who end up kind of outstripping him, and which is literally the same situation that's currently happening in British Columbia with the BC Conservatives getting rid of Dallas Brody and then losing Jordan Keeley and Tara Armstrong with them. It's like you can't. He's terrified of bad media coverage when the whole point is that your party came up from 2% to 44 because you
weren't afraid of bad media coverage.
Supposed to not be afraid of it. Like during the election, I can tell you they were terrified of bad coverage when they shouldn't have been. But for the most part, you know, they were at least forced to do the right thing most of the time. And now that they're in office and I have the power, you get party leaders who start kicking people out, even if it's so totally hypocritical. Rusted was kicked out by Kevin Falcon from the BC Liberals for like a comment about climate change. And now for something that he even admits Dallas is right about, he gets kicked out because somebody made up that she had like mocked molestation victims, which is insane. But David Edwards for a $20 super chat says, Dan Deep is on. How is Modi doing? Dan Deep Bordman. How is Modi doing these days?
Namaste, David Bye. Yes, Modi and I talked today, actually, and we decided to, colonize Canada and take all your spices. So the spice will flow, and then a spice trade will happen, and then everyone's food will have to be spicier. I've decided this. The all white people's meals will be made 3% spicier by the end of the year.
Yeah, and it goes up every 3% every year.
3% every year. There'll be inflation on spice. It'll be forced to use more chilies and the such in your cooking.
Yeah, and in 10 years, everything will be 2.5 times as spicy because math.
Yes.
And so anyway, but yeah, actually, honestly, on the Modi question, because it's not that Modi matters, but this is one area where both you and I have a problem with how the Conservative Party is conducting themselves. In several ridings now, they have decided to go with the anti-Modi candidate rather than picking somebody conservative because they are convinced that a community of Sikh people will vote for them if they do that, even though basically no Sikh people actually care.
They're fringe among the Sikh community, and all of them vote Liberal or NDP. This is the problem Conservatives are having. They're throwing away ridings in Brampton and the Lower Mainland by putting in Calistanis. And so people understand, okay, so quick background for Canadians. Khalistan is the movement that was responsible for the largest terrorist attack in Canadian history. They're the ones who blew up the Air India Flight 182. Hundreds of Canadians died. A worst terrorist attack pre-9/11. Okay. Fast forward, the Khalistan movement has grown in Canada because we never really prosecuted anyone who was involved in it. And it was been funded and pushed up by Pakistan over the years, and it's grown and grown and grown and grown. And it got into the Liberal Party. It got into the NDP party. This is Jagmeet Singh's Jagmeet Khalistani. They took over the Liberals, and now they're surging into the Conservatives and pushing it. And that's why, again, so politically, the Khalistanis are all culturally, they're in with the Liberals because Justin Trudeau. I'm not sure. Like Mocha did a good video in London where they're calling Justin Trudeau their Jatadar, their leader. Right, the great Sikh leader, because Justin Trudeau started a fight with India. So Khalistan's whole narrative is they want to balkanize and break up India to create a Sikh homeland for themselves, but it goes a bit further than that. It's a little crazy. So the Khalistan movement has been involved in a lot of the bad stuff in Canada, just like everyone else. Like they're in bed with the CCP, the IRGC, the Muslim Brotherhood, all the nefarious forces, and particularly the Khalistanis run the logistics of a lot of this. So the trucking companies, and the largest drug bust in world history was that fentanyl lab in BC, Surrey, BC, had them in. Okay. The Khalistanis don't like Hindus. They're very, very racist against Hindus, especially, and all Indian Canadians who are not one of them. So,
which means like basically 95%.
Which is most of them.
Yeah.
So think of it. If you're an Indo-Canadian, these people hate you. They preach violence towards you consistently. They attack your temples. They vandalize. And then the Conservative Party props up all these Khalistanis into positions of power and goes, look who we have now. It's all these Khalistanis. Woo! So the Indo-Canadian vote, which wants to vote conservative, because again, Trudeau screwed them over. Trudeau brought in all this chaos. Trudeau unleashed the doors and started this whole fake fight with India and shoved all the problems that should have been going on to China onto the Indian Canadian community. The problem is a lot of the Khalistanis have kind of left the Liberal Party. The main ones for corruption or whatever, a lot of the main ones have kind of left. There are the mid-level ones and some low-level ones that are still there. They're still in the system, of course. But now the highest-ranking Khalistanis are actually in the Conservative Party. So the Hindu and Indian Canadian community looks at the Conservative Party now and goes, holy shit. Like, they're letting in these lunatics who hate me. And then, they canceled the Diwali party. And
I should remind people that Hindu Canadians are the second most likely sub-demographic to vote conservative, or they should be, after evangelical Christians. So it goes like evangelical Christians.
And they live in all the swing ridings.
Yes. And so evangelical Christians, Hindus, I think there's like another group, and then like Catholics. They're more conservative voting than Catholic voters. They're like 65% likely to vote conservative, and except Hindus are more likely to be only like first or second generation Canadians. So the thing is, though, that their voting patterns haven't really been cemented. So the problem is if you really start punching those people in the nose over stuff and kicking out Hindu candidates from tons of nominations for no reason, they can en masse go somewhere else or stay home.
Like, again, I'm pretty plugged into the community. They're furious with the Conservative Party. They feel betrayed. They feel jilted. And I do know for a fact Mark Carney is about to make an appeal to the community. Mark Carney will likely throw this whole fight with India away or try and dust it away and then talk about renormalization with India. You can expect Mark Carney to do that to win over the Indian Canadian vote, while the Conservatives are still pushing the conspiracy the Liberals invented that they know is false. It's interesting. You speak to Conservatives and they know this is bullshit. Everyone in Canada in like our deep state knows the whole India fight is bullshit, and we're trying to walk it back somehow now that we know Trudeau's gone. But the Conservatives, even knowing it's bullshit, they can't be like, I don't know, like the Conservatives could easily swing back 10% in the GTA in like 20 ridings if they just said, all right, the Justin Trudeau's Liberals have pushed a decade of radical ideologies, and these pursuit of radical ideologies has alienated so many of our international relations. We will restore common sense, foreign policy, and morality, and that will solve a lot of the issues we have with many different countries that Justin Trudeau has created. Everyone would see that as a shift towards, getting over the India thing. But instead, it's likely Mark Carney's going to do this and win over a bunch of the Hindu vote, who are more than ready to stick it to Pierre because he jilted the community. Again, it's not just like, oh, what's he not doing stuff? He's bringing the Khalistanis. Hindu candidates were all kicked out of the nominations. Like, just, when listen, this happens all Canada. Like and again, it's hard to criticize the Liberals for being a fake democracy, which they are.
I was going to say, though, but candidates who are sparklingly good candidates, like businessmen, started multiple companies, local hero kind of stuff, guy who's actually like an Indian candidate wanting to reduce immigration. Because, by the way, guys,
they're the most anti-immigrant. Like, listen, if you want to start doing you want to win over the Hindu vote in Ontario, don't have any terrorists in your party. No terrorists. I could do it with no brown people needed. I would do it with no brown people. I would say no more terrorists. I get all the terrorists out there. Then go look the Indian Canadians in the eye, the Hindu Canadians, and all the people that I say, we're going to deport all the criminals and illegals. All the criminals and illegals will be deported, and anyone staying past the visa is going to go. And they go ballistic because they're complaining about this. They see like it's their neighborhoods where someone in the neighborhood like rents their basement out to 12 international students, and then like they're out like, and then
everyone resents those people heavily.
Yeah, everyone resents it. They actually know what you were talking about. Like, this is a community we could go in and be like, you understand these problems, and tell them how it is, and be like, we're going to deport them, and they'd be like, woo. But it's ironic. Like Poilievre's like, we're going to have direct flights to Amritsar and more and fast track the amount of students on visas. It's like, that scares the shit out of this community. And they can't get it. They just want you to be conservative.
And I would just say it's bad public policy. Bad public policy that's not winning any real voting block. Anyone who's a citizen who can actually vote wants there to be far less immigration. Doesn't matter what community they're from. And then 2, you're going to end up making more voters mad if you don't actually crack down on immigration and immigration fraud enough. Even legal immigration obviously needs to go down. If you ran on a cap of 125,000, you would get so many extra voters just sprinting out of the house to vote for you. But to move on here, Tails for a $10 super chat just says, keep up the good work. Your YouTube channel is the only reason I will still have a sliver of hope in this country. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Tails. Perspective for a $1.99 super chat. Thank you, Perspective. How does Bloc Québécois factor in this election? I think they mostly just hold on to what they have. If anything, they actually might do better this election because the PQ and the CAQ party and the PCQ, which is not separatist, but it's conservative, has been rising a lot in the province lately. So this is where I don't believe polls where they say, oh, the Bloc's at 5%. Like, no way they're going to be performing worse than they did back in 2021, which is about 7.5%. They're going to get 8. They're going to get 8.5. They could even punch 9. They could punch over 40% Quebec if enough people get sick and tired of Carney, because he has bad French. The more people in Quebec see that he has clunky French, and nobody is particularly mad at Blanchet right now. So why would Blanchet have fewer voters this time? David Edwards, $5 super chat. The problem with the debates in Canada is that they are always mediated by the left, and the questions are always geared up to the Liberals. Thank you for the $5 super chat. And you've given me the perfect transition, David. Because what did you think about Carney for some reason attacking Rosemary Barton for asking like the most generic question of him?
Yeah, well, your assets being a look inside yourself, Rosemary. That was so funny. That was I loved it. And then Rosemary to be cucked enough to like go after the Conservatives right after that. It was a beautiful Canadian heritage moment, in my opinion.
Yeah. How many? You used to do the worst of the CBC series all the time, and you used to rate how bad the episode. Yeah, you used to rate it on the Rosemary Barton scale of bias. How many Rosemary Bartons out of 10 did you give Rosemary Barton?
Oh, BC actually asked a Carney question. Like, no, I give Mark Carney 11 Rosemary Bartons out of 10 because he out Rosemary Barton, which I thought was impossible. But it
was such a weird. Honestly, this is something that I think needs to be addressed. Is that I actually think the reason that happened is that Mark Carney is a deeply socially awkward individual, and he had just been asked that question a few times, and his bionic brain loaded the I'm going to push back on a journalist like program, and he says, look inside yourself. This is coming from a place of ill will. It would make sense if it was a National Post reporter or somebody from the Toronto Sun, but he didn't see that
if he did that to Joe Warmington, everyone would be praising him.
Rosemary Barton sacrifices a goat every morning to whoever the Liberal Party leader is. And she's there with like Mark Carney's name tattooed on her head, slightly above Justin Trudeau's name that she's now crossed out. And she asks him probably just the same question that he'd been asked literally 24 times by other journalists, just because the CBC needs to get it on the record that they did indeed ask this question. She was even giving him a softball, a way of him saying, could you disclose any of the companies and make sure that they aren't, being given undue favor? I forget what her exact question was.
All he needs to do is be like, listen, I've been in full compliance. I'll continue to be in full compliance. These things take time. And
maybe
I'm committed to maximum transparency, Rosemary. I'm committed to being as transparent as I can be. and I've been following all the rules. I will continue to follow the rules, and I committed to being as transparent as I can be. Yes.
Even just lie better. Just play dumb.
That's
Just
a lie.
I'm not
Do you
sure.
not like this lie?
Say I'm gonna reach
insane.
out to those involved in my blind trust. Obviously, I don't exactly know who it is, and maybe in several days here, I'll be able to find a way of them releasing a general breakdown of what I have, so that people can know. Yeah, I'm not going to give any of these companies big sole source contracts out of nowhere. That's all he has to say, but he couldn't do it because he's such a peevish and socially awkward individual, and he's so overdosed on conventional wisdom. He was saying, "Oh my goodness, it's an Andrew Scheer moment." Someone asked me about conflict of interest. Dodge hard. It's like rather than just answer the question straight. In Andrew Scheer's case, it was that for some reason he didn't want to admit to being pro-life, even though everyone knows he's pro-life. And if he just said he's pro-life, it would have just gone away. And we got by hiding it, it just made it a bigger thing. This is going to be like a question that's going to dog him forever now. Patch Dress for $13.99 super chat. Thank you again, Patch. You're a hero of the chat. Building on the Pakistani grooming gangs in the UK with the Muslim imam approving, Muslims in Canada will be inshallah will eliminate Canada. Joking, kind of not joking. At least they want jihad.
Yeah, this is kind of what I see on the streets every day at Bathurst. I mean, a good amount of them want a jihad. Yeah, I mean, like, what's to make you think that if we do the same things the UK does, that the same problems won't manifest here?
I was going to say, actually, the funny thing, because we talked about the Conservatives making a mistake with Calistani candidates, and let's be clear, candidates that are also cheating. Candidates that were cheating, and they only got the nomination because they were cheating or they were appointed. It's not like this guy legitimately won. He's a little kooky. Do we want him to run? Maybe you could say he's a Calistani, but he won straight up. He can run. I mean,
exactly.
But the thing is, a lot of the guys like Harjit Singh Gill had 4 of his nomination opponents in Surrey Newton just kicked out so that he was acclaimed.
And this is the former Jag meter, by the way.
But I was going to say, though, then the reverse version of this is going on in Montreal and it's going on Toronto with the NDP and the Liberals running full on, death to Israel candidates, whether they're from the Antifa left or they are from like the kind of Muslim Brotherhood front group left. And so there's actually an opening for Conservatives to win really out of the box ridings in the GTA and even in Vancouver and Montreal that are more like Jewish heavy ridings who can't vote for any of these basically pro-jihad parties.
Yeah, and like the Conservatives should be anti-extremism right now. Like you have to play on how radical the Trudeau liberals are. And this is the time for it. And I know everyone's spooked about Trump and they'll call you Trump, but again, you have to avoid the Trump question if you're Pierre, because you don't want them to say Trump, like be like, no, Pierre Poilievre, like we're gonna be reasonable. You have to make things as common sense, like you're not up 25 points anymore. You can't just say axe the tax, build the homes, stop the crime, blah blah blah. Like you can't slogan your way through this anymore.
Maybe I'm different than a lot of voters, or we're different, but I found over time the slogans needed to make way for him putting out a big 20-minute video on how do we build the homes, and then just run ads on that.
That's his best thing. Poilievre is actually good at this. Like we covered his rallies at the beginning, and like I remember writing the article. Pierre Poilievre is popular. He's not a populist. A populist, well, like the definition of populist is stupid. A populist is like anyone who claims to be running for like the average man and not a group of special interests. And like you could say, yeah, maybe Mark Carney isn't a populist if he gets up and outright says, yeah, I'm for the boys back at Brookfield. If he, like
but
maybe
Mark Carney is a rare animal that way. Even Trudeau ran
Mark
with
Carney
populist
might be the first anti-populist candidate, but by the definition of populism, there is no 100% Justin Trudeau was a populist. Jagmeet Singh was a populist. George Bush was a populist. Bill Clinton was a populist. Bob Dole was a populist. Even Michael Ignatieff was a populist because they ran when you run an election where everyone has one vote, you run to the masses and not to a fringe elite minority. Oh, whoa, what a crazy political scheme you've come up with there. Oh, how evil Donald Trump, Pierre Poilievre, whoever else I don't like is. But populism, I think generally is more like reality detached rhetoric that feels good to a base, right? Telling you simple solutions to complicated problems. is populism. Now, there's some populism that's needed. Like, again, us going like, yeah, I would deport 1 billion people, right? All the criminals are being deported and this and that. Okay, yeah, that's a bit populist because you're going over the thing. And to an extent, like, that's fine.
I would always say populism is a style more than an actual political platform.
Exactly. But Polyev, I'll finish here. Polyev is so fundamentally different that his strength and what made him popular was actually, here is an issue, like we go in housing or inflation. And for 10 minutes, he would explain the problem thoroughly, and then offer a pointed solution. That's not populism. That's good communication. That's not populism. And he's the ability to do that. And, he kind of needs to get back to his roots here and do it on issues people care about and do a switch, like realize that life has changed.
I've suggested to his team, you need to go full Ross Perot, give him a little pointy wooden stick and like a stand with a chart on it, and have him use that pointy stick and point at a chart of the economy and start almost doing economic lessons. Like, it's too late now because we're getting into like election time and people don't really have the bandwidth for that right now. But I would have just had him for 30 minutes explaining how the inflation, how bad the inflation was, and showing all the liberal denials of it. Documentary style, but make it a little bit more down to earth to highlight your personality. Don't do too many flashy cuts and whatnot, but it's mostly just you, almost like a Thomas Sowell, or what, not Thomas Sowell, but kind of him, but William F. Buckley style. You're sitting in kind of my office right here, and I'm going to tell you about why we need to, cut corporate taxes. And then you can explain for a whole year why everyone's going to say that I'm somehow pro-corporate. He says, no, I'm pro-Canadian. Then he could have done that. That would have been great.
Yeah, but I think now, like, yeah, had Paulie been doing that instead of just being like, happy this day, happy that day, happy this day, happy that day, I think right now he actually needs to, like, the country needs a soul, okay? That's the problem. And what has made the Liberals so effective recently is, yeah, they're the arsonist and the firefighter in this case. I get that. But they ripped out the soul of the country, right? We are a post-national state with no core identity values, multiculturalism instead of uniculturalism. Everything's equal. Here's 1 billion immigrants, and the country is bad. We're committing genocide, flags at half-mast. No one can have a country, right? Now that Donald Trump's been ridiculous and they've been able to sort of inject a sense of nationalism. Now, I think you can't have a national identity that's built on not being something else. Like, you can't, like, there's a reason why Pakistan will always fail, and the reason why Palestine will never be. Because the Palestinian national identity is purely based on destroying Israel, and the Pakistani identity is purely off not being India and one day overtaking and destroying India and being better than them. It doesn't have any self-identity. Now, I believe Canada does have self-identity. We've ripped it out. I don't want to be cold gay Pakistan, where we're not America, and that's what Canada, and we're allowed to have a flag as long as we hate Donald Trump. I think that's long-term destruction.
I think the Conservatives should point out all these liberals who attacked Canada during the Freedom Convoy and saw the flag as a hate symbol back when it represented freedom, and now only like the flag that it represents contrarianism to the United States.
Yeah, and like, that's the thing. Is like, but Canadians are taking something. The reason why it's working is because they've had nothing, and it's being pushed in with something, even if it's not a positional thing. I think Polyev needs to sort of sell the soul back to the country and Canadian identity as something good and not based on hating America.
Yeah.
And I think that will get a lot of people riled up, and then of course, deport all the terrorists.
Anyways, okay, so moving on, we have a $5 super chat with nothing attached to it from Leonard S, because he appreciates us so much that he just wants us to move right along. But thank you, Leonard S, for that. Miles says, does Polyev support the Khalistanis? Probably. Thank you for the $2.79 super chat. My only thing is, I would say that I don't think Polyev likes the Khalistanis, and I don't even think most of his HQ team likes them at all. From everything I've been told, is that they have been sold a bill of goods from specific MPs and specific organizers saying, if you let us, give us permission to mess around in these ridings, and if we elect the right people, then you'll win the riding easily. And it's not how it worked.
And they're going to lose all those ridings.
Yeah. Harjit Singh Gill, I think I have the photo of it right here. This guy, who is the Surrey Newton candidate, was literally also the Surrey Newton candidate in 2019 for the NDP. And you think this guy, who came in third place, I believe, is now suddenly going to win the riding for you just because he has the conservative label stapled to him. This is where I'm not being like, oh, well, maybe you're being too sensitive. Maybe he's not that bad. Like, I have like 3 or 4 angles on the guy where he shouldn't be the candidate. 1, he was too lazy to win a nomination himself. He needed to be acclaimed. 2, he's an NDP guy from 2019. How do we know he's at all conservative? And then 3, the man's taking photos outside of a Gurdwara, Sikh temple, with like martyr photos around the outside. And like when I point this out, you'll have idiots coming out of the woodwork saying, well, here's a photo of one of them because I showed what those portraits are of, and they'll find one of like a sympathetic guy who's like just a Sikh rights advocate in India who was killed. It's like, that's bad. Also, isn't this guy somebody who stabbed 25 people to death? And it's like, they're like, we like him too. And that's basically what it turns into. It's like, you can't end up, it's like with the, yeah, you can bring that up.
I'm bringing this up because this guy's absolutely right. This is my ethos. So CJR902, you get to brought up early because you're right about this because I have the same opinion as you. Poilievre needs to shift away from the team that's advising him to play it safe. He needs to take control of the media narrative and force a news cycle to flow around him instead of Carney. I've been saying this for a while. He needs to be a character in the story. And he's too timid, and people sense it, and people vote with their hearts, not with their heads.
And the funny thing is, I don't even think it's his instinct to play it safe, but the problem is you end up becoming a little bit of your team. Because you constantly talk to your team, things start sounding like good ideas because that's the only idea you're hearing. Because again, you and I both know there's lots of MPs who are not comfortable with the way that this is being conducted, not just because I'm not comfortable for moral and ethical reasons, but because it's ineffective. This is not going to work at all. And so I think there is a lot of people in the Poilievre team who would love right now to make it 3 months ago and buy this all back. The problem is they've gotten in deep, and now they don't want to admit to have making up an issue. Verinder Sidhu, Calistanis like me for some reason. Thank you for the $2 super chat, Verinder. Verinder is pretty based. We were in Abbotsford, and he just went up to another Sikh guy and just said, hey, do you like Khalistan? Because he's wearing a turban, and he's like, no. And you just like, see, nobody likes it. It was hilarious. Yeah. David Edward to your separate chat. Dan Deep is with the Indians. Shocked. Yes. Daniel is a Indian government agent, and I'm apparently also an Indian government agent.
Yep, that's how it works. I tweeted in India. That's how it works.
Yeah. Leonard S says, what about the poly market number today showing that Carney is at 59% and Poilievre is at 42? I know these numbers don't quite equal to 100, but that is what I have here. What are your thoughts? And they don't quite equal to 100 probably because there's like a margin where you're saying nobody becomes prime minister or like it's somebody else because of like some compromise or, or also there might technically be money missing from the system because people technically might have been betting on Trudeau before. My thing is I don't think the poly market stats have really baked in what's happened this week yet. They're always going to be a few days behind. So Carney started going up as the polls started going up. And as the polls now start retracting after Carney gets the endorsement of Trump, basically because he's spineless and weak, I think things are going to start hurting. By the way, the Conservative Party finally listened to me on something. They actually ran the ad. I was 1-to-1 advising. Like, I think the only change that they made that I didn't mention was that as they're playing clips of Carney falling all over himself at that Nunavut press conference, they also kept putting up the Brookfield news about him moving things to the U.S. And then they just cut over as he's fumbling around, looking like a complete idiot and looking weak. They cut to Trump saying, yeah, I'd like to negotiate with the Liberals. Perfect. Amazing. Just do that. Say, can this man be the prime minister? And end it. That's all the attack ad should be. It's amazing. Perfect. Oh, it's so annoying when I see good advertising. And I know that I'll never actually get real credit from them, but you take it where you can get. One of the videos I did on that had like 150,000 views. No way they didn't see it. Because parties have people who all they do is read content and watch content, trying to find anything about what's going on. Oh. Patch Duress, $6.99 super chat. One more super chat for the progressive algorithm. Well, thank you, Patch, for having more than 600 live viewers. TNT is growing and no doubt reaching 100,000 subs by December. Yes, or I owe all my friends dinner. You know what, Daniel? If you fly out, you can be included in that, and I'll buy you dinner.
All right. Well, everyone like and subscribe, or else I will find you. I have a particular set of skills.
Which is rambling about
which is rambling about the carbon tax. Like, listen, I was rambling about the carbon tax before the Conservative Party is. You think you're tied to a carbon tax ramble? I have 3 hours on how stupid the carbon tax is. If you do not subscribe to National Telegraph, I will come to your house. I will find you, and I will explain in painfully explicit and long, very loud detail why the carbon tax is wrong.
And he'll also tell you about the windmills too.
Oh yeah, and windmills. I fucking hate the windmills. Nuke them all.
Miles 279 super chat. Thank you, Miles. Let's be real. Pierre likely wants mass immigration. I don't think that, or else why would he then go even lower on immigration than the Liberals did? Because he went to 250,000, 250,000. It's still too high. 5 years ago, if you reduced it to 250,000 from like what it was at the time, like 350,000, I'd be like, fair enough. We haven't quite had those million a person years yet. But once we had the years where we had more than 1 million people entering the country, now it needs to be 100,000 a year for at least like 5 to 7 years. And then we can figure out what we want to do. By the way, I'm not sure what your opinion is on this, Daniel. You can sound off in a second, but I think temporary foreign worker visas need to be temporary in the sense that once you overstay it, you don't even get to reapply for another 2 years. You get to go home, figure out if you want to work at home, and then if you're out of a job in a couple more years, you can come back and work here again. It shouldn't be something where you can effectively be a permanent resident forever because you can always just get a new renewal.
Yeah. I mean, there should be a you should go back to renew type thing.
Because you should. The thing is, it's not your home, and if anything, it's not good for your own country to have people just coming overseas to not actually build up that local economy. Yeah, the remittances are nice. Plus, I would love a remittance tax. You shouldn't be able to just send money back willy-nilly without any being taxed, because it is legitimately sucking money out of the economy for no actual value to the Canadian economy.
Yeah.
David Edwards, $5 super chat. And by the way, we're just going through super chats just because there's so many piled up. I will be getting back to normal chats. I don't want to be the guy who doesn't take normal chats just because someone didn't super chat. So once I get through these, I'll do that. David Edwards, $5. Thoughts on Carney trying to drop us into the EU? That's a big no thanks. No commies in Brussels running every aspect of our lives. Well, I'm not sure if he's like obviously wanting to bring us into the EU, but he wants us to be.
I think he does. I think he wants us in the EU. I think if I know these people, if I speak Trudeau fluently, and I can speak the Carney dialect of Trudeau, I think he absolutely wants to bring us into the EU.
I meant like maybe not officially, but I was going to say he would be willing to try and bring Canada under EU economic regulations and migration regulations, because he'll say that unless we do this, we can't trade with them. Exactly. As if we're not trading with them now.
Yeah, I would be, and this is why I hate it. Like giving up sovereignty to the EU instead of the United States. Like we're Team Canada, my ass. Like we've seen the Eurozone crisis. It's a joke.
By the way, both me and Daniel were right about that stupid JCCF lawsuit over the prorogation, where they were citing British, like UK lawsuits or UK cases to say that you can't prorogate government. Hey, was prorogation stupid? Yes.
Yes.
Trudeau and the Liberals obviously just did it to hold the leadership race and figure out what they were going to do. But it's legal. And I think it should stay illegal unless legislation is passed saying that you can only use it for these explicit reasons and it can only go on for this long. I think that's fine, because in our charter, technically you only have to meet once a year to pass a spending bill. They have passed a spending bill, or at least they can extend it out if they need to once they hit the time limit. But the thing is that I don't want UK precedent in Canada, because have you seen the UK? Tommy Robinson is currently in prison for saying things that
they're about to enact Islamic blasphemy laws, right? So like we're,
So please, JCCF, please do not ruin Canada through your good intentions. And I'm just assuming it's good intentions.
Yes.
Chad Harris, $20 super chat. The Conservatives seem to me to be spending too much time making sure their stances don't offend anyone, and not enough time pointing out why their stances are common sense. Keep up the good work, Wyatt. Yeah, like I would say that they just need, and this is Daniel's point, and I think Daniel articulates it really well. Poilievre needs to be the main character of the election.
People will vote for, like, again, Poilievre was doing really good. People were seeing him as leader, right? Before Trudeau resigned, everyone was attacking him. Like when Poilievre gets in, it's going to be so bad. And if everyone was putting Poilievre the leader in everyone's mind as future King of Canada, right? And then Mark Carney started acting like the King of Canada, started acting like unelected prime minister. It's like, wait, he's not even cabinet. How is he getting these briefings? Doesn't matter, guys. Don't worry. I got this. I'll negotiate with the United States. He's not even the prime minister yet, but he's acting like the prime minister, acting like the main character. And that's one of the reasons why he's been so successful at getting this momentary bump, right? It's all smoke and mirrors, I grant you. And he's way more dangerous than the Trudeau. And if he wins, the country's done. And like, I'm declaring refugee status. And like, we'll see where I go. Like,
Daniel goes and lives in the mountains of Idaho.
Yeah, it will be America. Will be India. Will it be Israel? Will it be Argentina? Won't be the EU. Not going to the UK, right? But who will give Daniel refugee status? That'll be an interesting question. We will ask in 2025.
We'll have a bidding war on who wants you the most.
Yeah.
People will probably, spend dollars on that. David Genjna says, I think Pierre's ability to speak from the heart is underrated. In his closing statement in debate, he should take that approach. And you're right in the sense that that's another angle he can do. Right now, everything's and they're not even wrong. And that's the funny thing about it. We're not even saying they're wrong in their critiques. It's like us saying that they need to stop talking about the consumer carbon tax. It was good that they finally pivoted over to the industrial carbon tax, but the thing is that they need to not just seem naysaying about what the Liberals are doing, or else the entire referendum is about Carney. And in fact, you actually want the referendum to be on you, Poilievre.
Frame the narrative. Say, because they're taking all your stuff, don't be like, again, as I said, ref, I had it first, ref, you stole it from me, ref. You should take this as everyone agrees that I am the best leader to fix the problems that the Liberals have brought to Canada. That's why the Liberals are now adopting my policy, and I thank them for it. Yeah. And I'm proud that they are doing it, because it shows that we, the Conservatives, have been able to slowly start taking Canada out of the tailspin that the Liberals put it on. I agree. They agree. I agree. They agree. Everyone agrees that we are the best party forward. The Liberals, Mark Carney agrees, and Pierre Poilievre agrees. The Conservative Party is the way forward. Now, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter what you say, because then you declared yourself prime minister, and everyone will see you as such.
And here's the thing. Usually, whenever we talk about elections being a referendum on one of the people, you don't want it to be a referendum on you. So Kamala Harris had the last election become a referendum on her and Joe Biden, and that's why she lost. In 2020, I know, all issues aside, with crazy amounts of mail-in ballots, and it wasn't really a full-on normal election because people were lazy. Voting was everywhere, where you can send in a ballot by like farting. So naturally, you got a lot of people who don't have their heart into who they voted for. But you could say that was an election that the referendum was against Donald Trump, so it made it very difficult for him to win. And in Canada's case, though, the reason why you actually do want it to be a referendum on you is the ballot question is not, is this person good or bad? The question is Poilievre or the 51st state, or it's Carney or the 51st state. The 51st state stuff is obviously not real. It's obviously silly. It's Trump's administration messing with Canada to get them to take their eye off the ball, which the real issue is about trade. And Melanie Joly every single day is wasting her time talking about the 51st state crap. But at least in the average voter's mind, who isn't already a hardcore supporter of one of the main parties, they're making their mind up on who is going to be stronger. And so you want it to be a referendum on, is it going to be Poilievre leading us forward, or are we going to get annexed, which is, again, silly. But I don't get to choose what the election questions are.
If only.
Yeah. CGAir 902, thank you for the $5 super chat. You think the carbon tax will save you? I was born in the tax, molded by it. I didn't know what a normal economy was till I was already a man.
I was born in the tax.
Miles 699 super chat. Will he drop his team's advice, or is he in too deep with them at this point, even if they're leading him with a bad campaign? Too bad he was
a good one.
He was good once. I don't think he's even bad now. I just think he could be more effective, because it's not like he specifically started saying stupid things. Poilievre has been saying totally fine things. It's that
he's saying totally fine things, but let's be honest, for like 4 to 6 months, they stopped. Right? They had a 20-point lead. and they didn't want to say anything that would jeopardize that. So they just went around saying, Merry Christmas, Happy Passover, Eid Mubarak, no Diwali, but whatever. We're at the Chinese New Year, Indian New Year. Like, that was just safe pablum, Happy Hanukkah bullshit. The number one, and they started to play defensive. And they're not playing to win. They were just defending what they had. And it's not only that, but what's the worst thing you can do on defense if you hockey and most sports? Stop moving your feet, right? Once your feet stop moving, they tell you this in pretty much every sport, you're done. And the conservatives stop moving their feet. And then crazy things happen. Trump comes in, Trudeau resigns, Carney, and then they got caught flat-footed. Hence the term getting caught flat-footed. Means you're not moving your feet. They got caught flat-footed and they got pushed on the back burner, and now they're being reactive. And people can sense it because people don't vote with their heads. Like 10% maybe vote with their heads. Most people vote with their heart or stomach or soul or whatever you want to call it, gut. And they see that Pierre is on the defensive. And people don't like that. So I'm saying, don't be the ref, the carbon tax, excuse me, because people don't like that. You might be right, but people don't like it. Right? They want to see confidence. They want to see you break out of the zone, skate, play in the offensive zone. That's what people want to see.
In a political campaign getting momentum, sometimes events around you suddenly give you a big shot of momentum. But to get momentum without something helping you, the Trump thing did help Polyev now. Maybe they can get a little bit more traction, but it's like firing up a nuclear power plant. It takes a while. You are loading a Boeing 747 super bus with hundreds of people, and it's going to take a while to get them on the plane. If you're sitting there flat-footed wondering, well, is it going to be Carney or is it going to be Freeland or what's going on? Where are they going to talk? I was telling the people this on the BC Conservative campaign, and they didn't listen to the extent that they lost. If they listened to me more, they would have won. And that's not me being arrogant. I mean, I was telling them to do basic things that if they did, they would have won. Like, do any amount of Facebook advertising before the election. The BC Conservatives still only have 18,000 followers on their Facebook page. I don't think I need to tell you people that is pathetic. 18,000 in a province of 5 million? What did you spend money on? But anyways, what you need to be doing as the Conservatives right now is making sure that you are loading people up, firing ammunition downfield, basically, like get lead down range. Don't wait and negotiate over, well, when's best to start the attack? Well, should we do it with this? And when we start focus grouping, we're done. If you need to ask a focus group certain questions, you're wrong, because it should be a gut instinct thing. And again, voters vote with their gut. So if you're not using your gut, you're probably not communicating on a gut level with these people. Gut to gut communication is all about politics.
Not wrong. People like to think elections are about truth and justice and upholding democratic values. No, it's an episode of The Apprentice.
Yeah. And you actually are right, because some people say, The Apprentice was very arbitrary because Trump would keep people in because he liked them. I'm like, yeah, it's a show. Yeah,
that's how
making Trump like you and doing good enough work that you're not going to get kicked out. That is what being in a company.
Oh, and by the way, Mark Carney is an excellent villain for this season of Trump's Apprentice. Like, if I was Trump, I would want Mark Carney, because you can still have a woke, gay, retarded, like, look at Canada. You don't want to be that. Like, he needs something to be like, look how woke and stupid this is. Right? And if Polyev comes in and fixes the country, right? Where's he going to go? Like, Mexico might have some woke lunatic socialists running it, but Mexicans aren't that woke. They're more like socialist, and it's all in Spanish. So Mark Carney's the perfect supervillain to come on Trump's Apprentice. He's a European globalist banker, woke Canadian, anti-Trump, slimy little central banker guy, print the money. What a great character foil. And what a great villain to prop up to the MAGA base. This sort of woke technocrat Mark Carney Canada type thing. So I think Carney would work well for as a permanent punching bag for him. I think they would have a real good relationship, and Carney could then sell that to, oh, look how tough he is on Trump. He gets under his skin to Canadian media, foment anti-Americanism here, and use that to as a baseline for his own popularity. And Carney and Donald Trump could sort of have an ego off at the expense of the countries. That would be nice. Wouldn't that be nice?
And here we have, I have the super chat, $5 from Paul Poco. And this is a good demographics question. For the Conservative Party of Canada to get the 55 plus votes, 55 plus with mortgage allow RRSP cash tax free to pay off mortgages, more money for the economy. And yeah, I understand your point about housing there for older voters, and that might be a good way of getting people on board for voting Conservative. I still think that rather than small boutique policies like this, which might be smart, I think it just needs to be a big vision about cutting taxes. Anyways, I'm actually seeing if I should invite someone on. Okay, we're getting Frank Vaughn on to talk about the PPC because he's my favorite person to talk about the PPC.
Okay.
As somebody who has like birthed the PPC in a certain sense.
I have this because Trump supports Carney because he's 1v1 us on Rust with the Terraform, wants to give Carney the broken controller. That's a Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 reference.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's 2. That's the small map. I remember that one. This
Daniel
is when I first got it.
50,000 years old, but he's right.
Yeah, this is first year university. That's like that's a throwback to like first year university.
That was great for me.
Yes, 1v1ing on Rust. Yeah, I got too good at Call of Duty one summer, and then I was like, all right, I'm done.
I liked Call of Duty Black Ops, and I liked playing it on hardcore, and they messed it up after that game. By the way, I have that trend going on where I have an NES game in the corner of every video, and this today it's Galgo 13, top secret episode. So good job. Someone asked me yesterday in my video making fun of Doug Ford, or saying that he's a liberal because he's a liberal. Someone said you should, like, because their name was Blaster Master, or no, Master Blaster in the comments. So they asked me if I could put up the game Blaster Master. It's very confusing because it's just a slight swap. So I had it in my last video. I did put up Blaster Master on the set. Oh my goodness, my on-air sign isn't even on, but people can't really see it anyways.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody has a question here that's not a super chat, but I want to get to it. Evan Solomon, lol. So Evan Solomon is running for the Liberals. You know, the supposedly neutral journalist who is only asking tough questions because he cares about the truth. Yeah, he's running for the Liberals now. It's almost like we all knew it the entire time that Evan Solomon, the man who has never asked a fair question to a conservative once in his life, was going to run for the Liberals. Patricia, 699 super chat. Saw a good video today from Pierre Polyev, 6 minutes about building big projects, location and permits pre-established and then sold to companies to build quick. I do like that. In fact, I was working with people who were actually pitching this to him. So that actually might have to do with it. The idea is that what we want is pre-authorized building zones and then also give companies very low interest government loans if they can build a certain amount of units of housing in a short amount of time that are up to a certain level of quality. Because right now, the government, whenever they want something done, they just give out some big bloated contract to somebody and they just be like, build 1,000 units someday. And then it ends up, they give them a giant cost overrun and the whole thing starts costing hundreds of millions more than it should because they just, didn't give a crap.
Yeah, I mean, this is where Polyev is good at stuff. Like, here's an economic issue that I can explain to you like a human being who is of intelligence to understand. More of that. Less carbon tax. Carney is just like Justin.
Somebody asked me what riding he's going to be running in. Where is this? Doesn't look, I think he's just saying that he's running, but nobody knows. I assume it's going to be like a Toronto riding because that's where all the media people live. Ariel says, and this goes back to something we were discussing at the start, so we can just talk about this quick. So, Wyatt, what's your opinion on Patrick Bet-David being completely clueless on Canadian politics, and do you think this election will be a repeat of 1984 with, it was John Turner as the unelected prime minister who ends up falling on his face? I think so. I also think this is kind of a repeat of 1993, where after swapping out Brian Mulroney with Kim Campbell, suddenly the conservatives or the PCs rocket past the Chrétien liberals for a brief moment of time, and then they just fall back down to earth because eventually people's better senses do cut in and say, wait, what the heck am I voting liberal for? or why am I voting PC? What did they actually do other than swap out the prime minister? And I think that is also going to be something that's going to dog the Liberals, that as they consume content from their campaign, they're going to be like, this does kind of just feel like what they would have been doing if Justin Trudeau was still the prime minister. But to answer that first part of the question, we did start on Patrick Bet-David and the PPC. The one thing I will add to this, and you can add to this too, Daniel, of course, but I honestly, here's one thing. You'll look stupid if you're Poilievre if you actually went down and just started doing American podcasts. I'm not the person who makes up the rules, but when the trade issue is the big election issue and the Americans are bad, like in terms of the Canadian narrative right now, are the Americans bad in a certain sense for the tariffs? Yeah, part of it's kind of unreasonable. At the same time, like, yeah, should you be able to go talk to anybody? Sure. Still not a smart move to go talk to a guy like Patrick Bet-David in Texas about Canadian politics. He has no clue about. By the way, if you get interviewed by somebody who's dumb, you're going to look dumb by association. Somebody who has no clue about the subject they're asking you about are going to ask you schizo-sounding questions.
But I know what the Maxime Bernier interview is. It's Patrick Bet-David asking American right-wing cultural issue questions, and Maxime Bernier answering cultural issue questions like, yes, freedom, we had COVID, we have our mandates, yes, too much. You're not going to get any sort of like substantive, like Canadiana, like specific Canadian policy. It's just going to be like, yes, I agree with what the online populist right says. Online populist right talking point A. I agree. Online populist talking point B. Yes, I agree. Online populist talking point C that contradicts talking point A and B. Yes, I agree. Like,
yeah, and that's the obnoxious thing, is that Bernier, again, the reason he also did the podcast is because he lives in Florida, guys. He lives in Florida. He could take a 1-hour flight to go do this podcast in an hour, and it's very easy to do. We have Frank Vaughn in the back end of the show right now, but I just want to do one more super chat question before we bring him on, and that's from Smug Doug. He says, "Thank you for the $13.99 super chat. Thanks for everything in these tough times, Wyatt. Glad to see you and Daniel again. Wyatt, do you watch the Angry Video Game Nerd?" Like, I don't watch the Angry Video Game Nerd anymore because he fell off, but that's why I started collecting NES games, because I grew up in that 2009 era of online content creators. But yeah, so that's why I actually started doing it. Pawn shops are great for NES games. If you ever want to start collecting weird old consoles, you can go and like pick up things in mint condition for $5 that should be like 100 or something like that. But now, without further ado, I want to bring on one of my favorite YouTubers. We don't even always agree on everything, but I always find his takes detailed and interesting, and he's been very good on the border issue. And he released a blockbuster video today, in my opinion, on the PPC, and it's going over its entire history. And that is Mr. Frank Vaughn here. I'm going to change up.
How you doing?
Not too bad. I'm trying to make this look a little bit better here. Come on.
Oh, that's
flying around all over the place.
Yeah. I know. I want to get a layout that looks a little bit better for us.
Well,
Mr. Bordman, you look like you made it home.
I did make it home.
How long were you over there?
5 weeks.
Well, it seemed longer. You were just rocking it.
I know, running for Prime Minister of Canada and India. It's bullshit. Carney shouldn't be Prime Minister. I'm actually the real Prime Minister. I'm challenging it in court because it looks like the Liberals forgot to count the foreign interference vote, which is should be counted twice as much. The Liberal Constitution says 2 votes from a foreigner is 1 Canadian vote. So I should be I should have 3 billion votes by that count. So hold on, the JCCF is on the case. They got it, and I will be rightfully reinstated as Prime Minister of Canada. But
I got to say, like the way that we pick leaders of the Liberal Party and prime ministers, you have just as much validity in your views as they have in their view of Mark Carney. I think you should sue.
Yeah, it's not even that far fetched.
So
anyway, speaking of fake political parties.
By the way, if people actually quickly go and they go to the channel and they hit oldest videos, the oldest video on the channel is in 2021. You guys all having us all having a live stream. So it's me with like afro hair in lockdown talking to you about mandates and the PPC. And now we're here to talk about the PPC. Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that.
Video. But Now I want to bring you on because I think it actually does matter. And it's not because I think it's even going to affect the election much as I just care for people protecting their wallets. Because every time I end up talking about the PPC, obviously the vast majority of normal conservatives like hearing that the PPC is not really a real party. It's a nice thing to say if you want people to everyone agrees naturally because they understand it's an unproductive party. But I will still have people telling me, well, no, they don't want to fix the problems, and Bernier really does want to fix the problems. And like me and Daniel have been saying a few times on the stream already, have you read the platform? Have you read the platform? It's so good. And I keep asking, if they care about it, why don't they actually run on it? But I think you can probably do a far better job than I, giving the background on the PPC and giving us what the current state is.
Well, I mean, the current state's the same as it was in 2019. The argument for the PPC was that the Conservative Party was weak and we needed a different option, and that they had rode roughshod over aspects of their constitution at the convention that had occurred that year, and there was just a lot of stuff. So this impetus, this idea of creating a people's party that had people in it that were well represented, was put on the table. And given that we only had, I believe it was 8 or 10 months to prepare for the federal election, the justification that Bernier gave and HQ gave for not having a constitution and not putting the focus on that, instead putting the focus on running a slate of candidates across the country, made a lot of sense, really. Because if you're going to try and create a new party, you're going to have to punch real hard, and you're going to have to punch up, and you're going to be lucky if you crack 2 or 3% that first time out. I was more than happy to get 2% in my riding. But then election day comes in October 2019, and it goes. And so the next day, I'm on the phone with HQ, and I'm just like, okay, what are we doing? And they're like, well, we're tired. So what do you mean we're tired? We got momentum. We got to keep moving. Like, we're tired. We're going to probably take the winter off. I'm like, what? You're going to shut down for the winter? Like, that's ridiculous. We have to pretend like we won, and we got to keep going because this is like a 3-cycle thing. If we want to do anything, we got to do it in 3 cycles, and that means we got to work every day. And that was kind of the first kind of warning flag, red flag. So fast forward, it's May or June of 2020 now, and I've been saying a lot of stuff privately. People say that I just blew things up publicly. I did a lot of talking privately about trying to get a constitution and trying to get a formal arrangement for the people. There was like 2 weeks, morning to night, where I was just on the phone with people saying, look, we said it wasn't a party of one. We said it was a party of many. We said it was a party of the people. Now we have to deliver the party of the people. And that's what we need to demand Bernier do. And they stonewalled it and they opposed it. And so I made a big stink. I showed the corporate registrations. I said, until we have a constitution and we have bylaws that protect the members and give them some kind of right, we are just a corporation with at the time, it was a 5-man board. They control all the money. They make all the decision making. They can kick out candidates wherever they want. They can bring candidates in. They can dissolve. They can do whatever they want. And that's not fair. So I brought that to light and I quit. And in the wake of quitting, they did this huge constitutional consultation with the EDAs. They invited everybody to provide input as to what kind of constitution they wanted. And there were posts all over X and people making submissions, and I was still getting questions even though I quit, and I helped people to make those submissions. And all summer long, they collected those submissions. And then in September of 2020, they shelved the whole thing and they memory hold it, and it's never come back. And I know, because I talk to people in the PPC all the time, in the internal conversations that go on there, they've all been told there will be no constitution, there will be no member rights until Maxime Bernier retires. And then they can figure out what they're going to do. He's going to spend all the money, probably in this election, and then he's going to leave them high and dry. And the thing is, every time I talk about the PPC, I will not swear on this channel, but I eat it. Like
I already did it a bunch.
It's not just from PPC people. It's like my audience is like, Frank, bro, why? Why are you talking about these people? They're irrelevant. You're better than that. Talk about something real. And I just think there's another crop of suckers. He's down in the United States doing this great big podcast circuit right now. It's the Americans are looking for anybody they can shove in front of a camera because Pierre won't do it. and Carney won't do it. And there's no one up here that can go down to the United States and explain the Canadian perspective. And so they dust off Bernier. And of course, he's the guy they find. He's willing to talk to anybody.
I was telling Daniel on the
except,
phone.
Except doing it through door knocking. Happy to talk to anyone online. Not in
door knocking.
Anyone outside of anyone outside of the riding he's running to be elected into. Just to clarify that.
The PPC will accept votes in anywhere where it won't push them over the finish line. But I was going to say too, I was telling Daniel this on the phone earlier today. It's like the whole Patrick Bet-David thing is so sad for Bernier, because Bernier would have never been invited if Poilievre went on. And again, I don't think it's strategically smart for Poilievre to go on PBD's podcast, because that guy doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to Canada. And I said, it's actually dangerous to have a dumb interviewer ask you questions, because they'll ask you super schizo questions that makes you look insane by association. But regardless, and then we have the trade tension.
If there was to have a substantive interview with Patrick Bet-David, half the answers have to say, well, that's not how things work in Canada. Let me explain how your question is flawed from the outset.
Which means it's useless. But to get back to Bernier is only there to fuel Patrick Bet-David's one-sided beef with Pierre Poilievre. He's basically saying, see, look at my girlfriend. See, you didn't want to be my girlfriend, and now
this is tilted crazy girl behavior. This is like, you asked the guy out and he's like, no, I have a wife. Can't go, and then you show up like you're just like throw yourself at his cousin or something. It's like, yeah, and you're like, okay, I don't all right.
Well, I mean, either way, Bernier's the guy to go down there and do it, of course. And the thing is,
he was Oregon, Florida.
There's going to be a new crop of suckers that come out of this, and it bugs me because he takes their money. He takes their time. He gives nothing back. He doesn't want to win. That by-election in what was it, Portage-Lisker? Do I have that memory right?
Yeah.
He actually showed up 3 days late into it, and he knew the by-election was going to happen.
They couldn't get him out of the hotel room. So, the PPC was paying for the HQ's hotel. Everybody was there. They're all in hotels, and the volunteers show up, and they're just like, someone's got to get him out of the hotel room. He's got to get out and knock on doors. He turned success, which was 22% of the vote, that's a pretty big vote share. I mean, for a new party, that's amazing. And so they go in, they shunt the local guy aside. They're like, stand aside, kid. Max has got it. And then they lose 1 in 4 votes, and they spent all kinds of money on it. You can't win. He can't win. And they make this argument that it's just name recognition and people don't know the policies. Well, listen, look, the policies are words on paper.
If it's name recognition, how did Maxime Bernier do worse than the previous guy?
Right? If he's such a great leader, he screwed himself over when he lost in the Beauce, and then his next decision was to run in a by-election in York Center, where I believe he got 200 votes. Yeah. What he lost wasn't York Center. He lost the Beauce forever. It put it out of reach. He's never going to get elected there again, and it was the only place. And I remember I said that in 2019. You got to win that seat back. Spend more time there. Stop touring the country. Go back to the Beauce and stay there until you've won the thing.
And then expand outwards.
He went back there, I think with 2 weeks left, he started campaigning there. And it was a huge loss in 19. It was an even bigger loss in 21.
It was also, and I've told people, because people will try and make the excuses, people were just not ready for the PPC yet. I'm like, no, nonsense. He could have won. He only lost by 10%, which sounds like a lot, but realize if he took away 5% from his conservative opponent, it's tied. Or drive up your voters more, or make a deal with bloc voters, bloc organizers in the area and say, hey, I'm going to be the tough on immigration guy. We might not agree with everything, but this is a more libertarian tinted riding. And the Beauce is definitely more libertarian because they do a lot of trade into the United States with Maine. And so there's a lot of people there who are big business type conservatives who aren't really interested in separatism. So you could have seen the bloc organizers saying, you know what, we can stick it to the conservatives and the liberal establishment by backing you up in here. He did not do he basically did almost no pre-election canvassing in 2019. He basically spent a little bit of time at the very end of the election in the riding back when people don't care anymore. They already saw, and that was a long election period. They already saw you didn't care. So you showing up 10 days before, 7 days before saying, see, I'm campaigning now, is going to get a lot of people to be like, whatever. And in Portage-Lisgar, they knew an election was going to come 3 or 4 months in advance because Candice Bergen stepped down. It's the best riding that they had in 2021. Instead of getting there on the ground saying, I'm going to be the candidate, I'm going to hit doors, I'm going to talk to everyone 5 times, which is totally possible in that amount of time. He shows up literally 3 or 4 days into the actual writ drop. They make an SUV purple and put his face on it, and then he sits at the Holiday Inn and eats sausages or something.
Yeah, I mean, he even at the first conference, which a lot of people keep calling it a convention to this day. Like, oh, well, we had that conference in 2019. It was a conference. It wasn't a convention. He showed up late to the floor. Like, the thing was a half hour late getting kicked off. He was in the hotel. I don't know what was going on. Like, was he on some important call, like some secret call? I don't know. It's a trend that keeps cropping up with the guy. And the fact of the matter is, there's been no structural progress. Like, I don't actually have a problem. If you want to be a guy and you want to found a party and you want it to be a dictatorship and you're going to be the sole leader and you're going to have a military style chain of command, fine. Just tell people that's what you're doing. Don't put the word people in your party name.
Do it.
If there isn't going to be any people.
Frank, even if he was lying or whatever, like, it's kind of the why thing. If he was doing it, like, if he was like, I am General Bernier because I'm the only one who can, and he actually was like one of the great men of history and just like motivated and he had a vision, the PPC will be me, and he knew that, like, listen, it's a baby party, and if I give it to someone else in its infancy, they will not be able to see my baby flourish. And if he was just out there every day and the PPC kept going up and up and up and up and up, and it was completely tied to Bernier, who was like an absolute just tank and workhorse and like getting in on these different issues and just like, I go, you know what? Respect the thing. Like, the pragmatist in me just says, you know what? He's kind of earned it. But this is the Maxime Bernier show where he's hanging out in Florida, siphoning off the donations, and then coming in to he just wants to be a speaker at speeches and rallies and have his little lapdogs run around him. And then once they see the game for what it is, they get kicked out. They bring in a new guy. And then the cycle just repeats over and over and over.
People don't realize, because he's knowingly playing on people's ignorance about how politics works. The idea that we're just one inspiring speech. We're just one video of him being arrested away from being at 50% tomorrow. And it's like, no, politics is not a long cavalry charge, not Waterloo. It is World War I. It is slowly grinding it out, taking a position, fighting for it, proving you can hold it before you move on to the next place. And the other parties also don't understand how politics works from time to time. I always say the conservatives fight battles like it's blockhouse warfare sometimes. Here's our perimeter. We're in a winning position. Now all we're going to do is defend. It's like, okay, well, the best you're going to do in a day is not lose territory. So, it's a stupid move. And so I think that's what Bernier's been doing. He's been pretending like it's going to be one cheesy 90s Independence Day inspiring speech, and then we're going to be everywhere. It's like, no, we're not. And you're lying to people when you pretend that it's not going to. I've had PPC organizers tell me, I don't door knock because I've never had my opinion changed at a door.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. Like, I've seen something like the weird inside PPC, like crazy, like, with like quasi-Nazi PPC lunatics like online, and not all of them, but my favorite, like those guys, like the neo-Nazi PPC people, always get to we don't need voters, we don't need the votes, people don't deserve the PPC. If they haven't heard of the PPC by now, they don't deserve the PPC. We'll just keep yelling at each other in right here, and like this year elections, they're just so far gone that they're like, yeah, we don't even want voters.
Read the comments on my Twitter from yesterday, because it was yesterday's video. The thing's only been up for about 24 hours. They come in, they curse, they swear, they name call, they talk about things that never happened, like this idea that I staged a coup to take over the PPC boys. That never happened. Nothing even close to that. I revealed that the emperor had no clothes and I quit. That's how it went. There wasn't even a mechanism for anybody to get involved in leadership at the PPC because it was a top-down dictatorship. But they name call, they swear, they demean, they attack CPC people with vitriol and vomit, and somehow that's supposed to magically convert into a winning strategy. Like, you're not winning hearts and minds. Like, as a matter of fact, if you think my goal is to undermine the PPC, you're helping me. I put out a video and you people go crazy for days. Thank you. Thank you for helping me.
I like the one who called you out for saying he's in a cult, and then you showed his footage. His profile picture is literally Maxime Bernier in like an Air Force helmet.
Right. When did I didn't know Maxime Bernier was an astronaut. Please tell me more about that. Yeah.
Oh, here's a great one. Will Dow Bianco says, I've had PPC supporters tell me that I am vote splitting by voting for the CPC. Yeah.
Well, like, I don't know how.
Good on them for. I mean, it's stupid and fight fire with fire. That's all I got to say.
Well, and I don't know how it is now, but I do know in 2019 there was this argument that it was pure vote split. And I remember going to the meetings because I was at every single meeting. You'd have 500 or 1,000 people at these meetings. Can the PPC gather 500 or 1,000 people under a roof these days? I highly doubt it. But you'd go there and you had a mix. There were ex-liberals there were ex-NDP people, and there were ex-CPC people or disenfranchised people. There was a good mix.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you're going to find that same mix in the PPC crowd today. The 2019 crop was far less toxic than what is here in 25. Oh, yeah. The best people are long gone, and most of them are smarter than I am. They just kept their mouths shut and went on with their lives. I keep having to come back to it for some stupid reason.
Well, and what Daniel's talking about, just to contextualize things for people, when he says like the borderline like Nazi members of the party now, he's talking about the people who now even they'll criticize Bernier for talking to Indian voters. So in like the minor moments of actual outreach, they'll then start like tweeting out actual racist memes because he decided to talk to some.
Yeah, Bernier's just capitalizing on the CPC screwing up what I was talking about with the Hindus, right? And like when the CPC did like a purge on the Hindus, Maxime Bernier, it wasn't Maxime Bernier. I know who it was who advised Maxime Bernier and got him to do this, but Maxime Bernier nodded along and basically got a bunch of the principled conservative Hindus who felt jilted by the Conservative Party said, yeah, sure, you can be PPC, right? To sort of siphon up that vote. But none of that's due to the PPC platform or anything Maxime Bernier has done. That's purely the Conservatives messing around with the community that the Liberals had also messed with, and then being there to scoop up the leftovers for like a one-night stand in this election.
Yeah, and because he's never even there to back up these people on the ground. Because Frank, as you've said before, they literally do not give any money to their local candidates to buy signs or literature or anything. And maybe you could even justify, hey, you're in Vancouver Center. We can't give you anything. I'm sorry. There's not even areas to put up signs. You'll have to go get a few of your friends together to scrape together $300 to print up some literature because you're in a dead on arrival riding. You are basically just here.
Yeah, we have like, listen, we're behind. We have our top 10 ridings at maximum spending, and then we have a riding of the next 54 we've identified where we can move up, and that's where like the second tranche of money will be going into, and the rest of you will be working on pittance. We're sorry, but yeah, we're not going to invest too hard in Toronto Center. We want to run a candidate, and we'll support you and with some basic stuff, but well, like again, run a political party, but.
Yeah, and that
I personally I think it's too late. Like I think we had an opportunity in 2019 to do something different, and if we had have ran with it the right way in 2025, we might have a different story today. But as it sits, he's a known quantity. Everybody knows who he is. He's been rejected, and I honestly think even if the Conservative Party gets a majority, they manage to somehow hold the country together. But they do a terrible job. They become Mark Carney 2.0. They're like Doug Ford in Ontario. They govern like that for 4 years. So we come out of that, and everybody's fed up with the CPC. They don't know what they do. I still don't think the PPC under Bernier has a chance of growing. Like I think it's dead in the water, and it's certainly not going to get better with the strategy that they're employing right now, which is to try and win Twitter polls. Which, by the way, the PPC used to do a good job of winning every single Twitter poll. They can't even win those anymore, which is it's a sad state of affairs. It just shows that the online community shifted too.
Yeah, and like also, Poilievre is way more conservative than O'Toole. Like in the O'Toole era, and like listen, the Andrew Scheer era, they had a point. They were mad, milk mafia. Here's our thing, pure conservatism, like for the boys. You get that. You had that. And then in 2021, they actually had a foil in the Conservative Party that they could say just like Justin too. I've always thought, listen, the uniparty argument is never a viable long-term argument for the PPC. You don't want to like make your brand to be like you'll never have power in politics. It's not smart, but the uniparty marketing works a lot better when you had Aaron O'Toole versus Justin Trudeau, because Aaron O'Toole was that fake blue conservative, had screwed over the conservative base who pulled for them. There was a pull of the rug out from conservatives on Aaron O'Toole. I didn't get a rug pulled. Wyatt and I called it pretty clearly. And then you could actually go and say, hey, because Aaron O'Toole didn't draw any policy distinction from himself and the Liberals, basically just said he'll do it better. You could actually pull the uniparty rhetoric on Aaron O'Toole. You can't pull the uniparty rhetoric on Pierre Poilievre. And I know he's not perfect, and I'm talking about, listen, no one's bigger on exposing the Conservative Party's faults than Wyatt and I, who've, talked about, the BS nomination nonsense and the Calistanis coming in and fake nomination writings. Like, don't think we won't criticize the Conservative Party, but to say that Pierre Poilievre is like just another liberal, it's all the same. It doesn't make sense to people. It's just
the PPC was a little stupid enough back when O'Toole was demoting Poilievre in the shadow cabinet. Bernier was dumb enough to then say, "Oh, this guy's great. He should join the PPC." And this is before Poilievre has actually shifted even more right. The funny thing is Poilievre, and I think that on certain things he's going soft, and that's a problem. But and we can get to some of that stuff in a second here. But Poilievre became more conservative than he was in 2021 when he ran in 2022 for the leadership. And since then, he's actually gotten more conservative on several issue fronts, like gender theory, like immigration, like taxes. Now he's against the industrial carbon tax, mostly as a response to the Liberals. But still, where are you finding the chink in this guy's armor where he's moved left and he's betrayed the base and he says that he's no longer going to get rid of like the gun ban or something like that? That hasn't happened.
Yeah, because he's not going to go around and like shoot all the immigrants that you don't like.
Yeah. I mean, it's the disagreements or the things that I've been critical of when it comes to Poilievre aren't really a right-left paradigm thing. They're just specific policies. Like, one of the things that I regret is that he didn't take a middle road when it comes to the United States and Trump. Like, he kind of lumped himself in with Team Canada. There's this whole diplomatic avenue, middle road, that nobody's occupying. And I think that's really unfortunate. And I understand why this country hates Donald Trump, like 60%, particularly Eastern Canada, where you got to fight elections. They hate Donald Trump. It makes no sense. Even small town Campbellford, Ontario. Denise Thompson was just up here. Hi, Denise. Glad you're watching. Miss you. That town it's a little small town, an hour and a half outside of the GTA. It's cottage country, and they hate Donald Trump there, and they hate conservatives up there. And I don't understand what's in the water in Ontario. So I get what he's thinking, but I don't think the conservatives never do well when they try to when they play to what the left defines them as. They have to have the initiative the entire. It's like you said, Wyatt, about you have your four walls, you're doing really good, and you try and hold ground. The second conservatives try to hold ground, they lose it. You have to constantly be punching. And if the media isn't running scathing headlines about things that you've said every single day, you're not doing it right. You got to have them hating you and adversarial. And he's got this huge platform. He could be delivering a message that's strongly Canadian at the same time as saying, but the Americans are still our best geopolitical trading partner. I mean, they're right there with the biggest market in the world. Like, they're right beside us.
Well, yeah, he has to say, listen, I will make Canada so strong, and when we have more leverage and we're a connected country, I'll fix this. All he has to do is go with, I'll fix this. I know how to deal with Trump. I'll fix it. Trump will like that. Respect him. Don't bash him. Just say, I'm going to fix this.
I'm going to jump over the super chat just because it's pertinent to what we're talking about now and helps me clear them out. But Miles said for 279, thank you, Miles. Do you think the CPC will stop playing it soft? So I think
I know the CPC well enough to say there'll be one big adjustment before the election, just one. So we'll see how that goes. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, and so what topics would we say right now that they're maybe too soft on? And do we think that they're going to correct? Because I would say that, and everyone should actually go subscribe to Frank. I'm gonna throw his channel link in the description again below, because I think that you've done a really good job talking about the border and drugs and money laundering. That's actually an aspect where I think there is a sort of type of Canadian you can win by saying, "Hey guys, Trump, in a certain sense, caught us with our pants down because of how bad of a job the Liberals have been doing. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be tough. I'm going to fix these problems. And then I'm going to renegotiate a better trade deal for Canada." That would be
You know how
smart.
easy it is politically to link what you see with your own eyes in every single community across this country, the entire lower Fraser Valley, whether you're in Chilliwack or Mission, BC. Every park is full of homeless, drugged out, fent zombies, and meth heads. Link that. Saskatoon, Regina, Prince Albert, every single city's got the same drug problem. Link that with the facts that we are overrun by triads and cartels. Our ports are wide open, and we're doing hundreds of billions of dollars in business. These labs that we're busting where they only charge one guy, it's a $500 million capacity. One guy's been charged. Where's the rest of the people that ran that network? Because if there's no one else, we should be giving that guy a job. He needs to be working somewhere because he is a machine.
Oh yeah, if he can, if he was solely responsible for a massive drug empire, then yeah, let's.
He's got the work ethic of a champ. Like,
yeah, let's give him I'd let him run a company.
Yeah, give him a department, give him a ministry. Give him the CRA.
And by the way, the largest drug bust in world history was along the U.S.-Canada border. It's not more than a small car ride to get to an unprotected part of the border to walk a duffel bag over if you want to sell things for even more in Seattle. Because the thing is, like, when I hear from Trudeau, because this is how he screwed up the negotiations early on with Trump, he started saying, well, we're only 1% of seized fentanyl. Oh, we only had 2 kilograms. And it's like, yeah, it's seized because we don't actually defend the border. The Americans happen to find a lot more drugs because even when Joe Biden was soft on the border, they still have ICE agents all across the border waiting to identify people. And if they see people with big duffel bags, even if they're going to let them into the country, they're going to seize the duffel bags first. So they end up getting a lot more. They have working scanners at their ports of entry. I've had my own subscribers tell me that they were going over the Ambassador Bridge, or like whatever the port of entry there is along Michigan and Ontario, and they said that I think the border guards even told them, yeah, these things haven't been working for a while. They only had one working scanner, so most trucks are going through without even being scanned. Why do they think they find that these guys like driving like dozens of kilograms of coke from BC to Arizona? You think that was a one-off? It's not. Our drug dealers are not nice enough to only sell in our country. They'll walk over the border. If anything, it's actually safer for them to sell into the U.S. because now it's a different gang that's not connected with them doing it.
Well, one of the reports I did that I actually found surprising, because in the process of doing the research for the report,
breaking news, Chandra Arya, for all you Chandra maniacs out there, has been kicked out of the Liberal Party.
What? Of course. I mean,
now the Liberals have screwed up their entire pitch to the Hindus. So you guys have heard a narrative get destroyed.
Yeah, everything I said on the Hindu community thing has just taken a massive, massive turn, because I thought the Liberals were political geniuses, but the ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory is a Canadian value in Canadian politics. Chandra Arya, I have been informed by the Liberal Party my nomination as candidate for the upcoming federal election in Napanee has been revoked. This is news with deeply disappointing, does not diminish the proud honor and privilege to serve the people. Over the years, put hard in it. I'm running on behalf of the national, dear Chandra, I'm running on behalf of the national campaign co-chair, who has conducted a thorough review of your eligibility to serve as candidate for the Liberal Party of Canada in the riding of Napanee. After careful consideration, based on a review of the new information by the chair, Green Light Committee, national campaign chair, co-chair is recommending the revocation of your status as candidate. Unfortunately, based on that recommendation, your status as candidate for the Liberal Party of Canada has been revoked. I appreciate that this news comes as disappointment to you and your campaign team. Sincerely, Andrew Bavin. No fucking way. Liberals are so stupid. Wow.
Well, just when you think that maybe Pierre's gone too soft, there's one favor that the Liberal Party is doing for him, but the other favor is Doug Ford. hobnobbing with Freeland and hobnobbing with these liberals at the same time as he's denying he hasn't met with Pierre Poilievre and he's not doing anything for him. I think Ford's doing Pierre a big favor by basically jumping in bed with Team Canada and the Liberal Party. Like, it might be enough.
So I might want to just quickly. I'm just going to go through some of these just so we can get going. Not like we're leaving, but just to get through some of these super chats, we can talk about them along the way. And then we're about to get into some directed at Frank. So David Edwards for $2. Thank you, David. Said, didn't Evan get busted in some sort of art fraud? Before you came on, Frank, we were talking about Evan Solomon running for the Liberals, probably in the GTA area. And we were talking about how, isn't it funny how he's supposedly supposed to be a neutral journalist? And then even though, as we keep identifying, his really obviously slanted questions to conservatives and very light interviews for liberals, and we kept being called, no, you're just sore losers or whatever. You don't like that he asks you real questions. And of course, now he's running for the liberals, but he was actually caught in an art fraud scandal where he was like the middleman in buying up like money laundering art or whatever. It was something crazy going on.
Yep. And I mean, people exercise poor judgment. I mean, people think Rosemary Barton's in bed with the CPC. Like, what? I was lost in a thread for a half hour the other night, listening or reading leftists talk about how Rosemary Barton's always been a supporter of the CPC. I'm like, what world are you people in? Like, what drugs are you on? The fentanyl crisis is sitting home.
Have you ever seen the chart that people put out claiming that every single paper is conservative? That they always endorse
That's
conservative?
Ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. There is no conservative media in this country. Like, maybe the Toronto Sun does a bit. You know, like I think they still got Joe Warmington over there. He's retired and does guest spots, but like there ain't much. There's just not much.
Yeah, the National Post is like conservative, but it's like on brand conservatism for the most part. I've been impressed with them backing up Dallas Brody on the Kamloops issue in British Columbia. So maybe they're getting better over time because they used to be really big Aaron O'Toole types. They were like
maybe they're more balanced. You know, the NP definitely seems more balanced.
But yeah, people put out this chart claiming everyone and their dog endorsed the Conservatives. And you're like, no, the Toronto Star did not endorse the Conservatives. It turns out that their one conservative opinion writer tends to be the most read one. And he said something nice about the Conservatives. And now suddenly the Toronto Star is conservative. Yeah, he actually makes money. This actually happened on the Huffington Post back in the day. If you know that Greg Gutfeld used to write for them, and he was like the most read guy because he actually had good opinions. And so people would click on it and read it. Yeah.
Better fire him.
Yeah, and they eventually did, even though he was making them tons of money. No good deed goes unpunished. This is a good question for Frank. David Edwards, $10 super chat. Thank you, David. Maybe Frank and other people in the PPC started out because they wanted a different choice, but for Max, it was literally sour grapes. The purple color suits the party, the sour grapes party. Well, I didn't mind the purple color, and apparently Frank was the one who actually came up with the purple color or latched on.
You mix red and blue together, you get purple. I understand.
Yeah, I started wearing purple before anybody else, and I'm not just saying that to toot my own horn. Like we needed a color, it wasn't happening, so I'm like, I'm just going to start wearing purple, and we'll see what happens. And purple is the color, and I thought that's exactly, Daniel. You mix red, you mix blue, and you get purple. And we were just going for that common sense angle, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, mix it all together, and woo, on we go.
And the thing, too, is that the PPC in 2019, and this was Bernier's problem at the debate, was that everything was directed at the Conservatives. So he undermined his own people wanting to build a party.
He's going to do it again, too.
About the platform. And here's the thing. Remember all the reports where people were saying it's unfair the PPC wasn't invited to the debate? Well, they had 5% in the last election. They should automatically be included. Yes, that is a rule. I, in this case, actually support them changing the debate rules, the debate commission, because, well, what happens if you had an anti-lockdown party that got 6% in the election, maybe even 10%, and now the party fell apart, nobody's around? Does that leader get to be on stage? Or
no, I'm in favor of kicking the PPC out of the debate because I am pro PPC. And I know how this goes. The PPC benefits the most because Maxime Bernier benefits the most by getting to go around. They cannot handle what they have to say. I am the most important one. And then they get that bump of like, yeah, no one could deal with Max. He would have totally killed them all. And then he can go on Joe Rogan and be an internet celebrity. He gets more out of the debates by not being at the debates and complaining about the debates. If he was in the debates, he would just mess it up like he did the first time, where he started acting like
Dude, do you know how hard we worked to get him in that first set of debates? We worked our balls off to get that done. And then he went there. And I remember sitting at home, sitting there. I got my snacks, I got my drink, and I'm watching it. And I'm just like, wow, you got 75 seconds. And that's what you do with it every time. Like we didn't do anything. We didn't make any.
You attacked the Conservative Party. You looked like a jilted ex-girlfriend being like, you are not as conservative. No,
it was bad.
He should have been the most right-wing guy. He should have gone after Jagmeet for being like a terrorist.
You should have called Jagmeet a champagne communist. Should have just clocked Justin Trudeau over and over again. That he should have showed that he is the best offensive lineman against Trudeau, and instead he was sitting there.
To fix Wyatt's analogy, it would have been a defensive lineman. An offensive lineman protects Trudeau. Offensive linemen are protectors. Defensive linemen are the aggressive, come in and rip everything up.
I don't know how sports works.
I know you don't. That's why that's why I'm here.
Yeah, but he screwed it up that way, and so I support. And the new, by the way, the new rules for the debates, they could still join. They could still get into the debate easily if they were a competent party. You need 4% in the polls on average, and you need to have a certain amount of ridings that you have candidates in. It was basically 3/4 of the ridings you have candidates in. It should be easy, but the thing is 4% is considered too much for them to be expected to get in a poll because they don't market themselves. If they were even just generically dumping money on Facebook and X advertisements all year long, just having $1,000 a month running, they would actually probably be at 4% if they were just even doing that. They don't even do that because that cuts into Maxime Bernier's mimosa budget.
Well, they have, I believe they have about $2 million in their war chest. The thing that I'm curious of is, do they have more money than the NDP? Because I don't know.
Everyone has more money than the NDP. The NDP is negative money.
They're broke.
That's actually a good point.
They are so wrecked. It's a shame because even if you didn't like Jack Layton's policies, you have to admire where he took the party. At least I do. And it's gone. It's going to be erased. There's going to be nothing left. I don't know if they get a single win.
21 gun salute for the NDP.
I have to post this. I have to post this screenshot on screen right now because I subscribe to the NDP email list just for the fun of it to see what they're saying to their people. They're actually
this is how we have fun. Other people have lives. We do politics.
Yeah, they're actually basically admitting they're screwed. Look at this. Wyatt, I won't sugarcoat it. I'm worried. The next election could be called at any day now. Conservatives are gearing up with deep-pocketed donors and well-funded attack ads. If we're not ready to hit the ground running the moment the writ drops, we risk losing critical ground. They're even saying...
there's no risk. The critical ground is falling out from under you. It's over.
Yeah. I like how they're actually saying, we're sad and broke. Can you give us money so that we don't lose everything we have? Yeah. And dude, I would just tell them lie.
What a message. There's that optimism.
Yeah, lie to your people. Just say that we're going to win everything if you give $5. They're like, if you give us $5, we might not lose everything. Singh might win re-election if you give him money. And the thing is that a lot of NDP guys actually want Singh to lose because they hate him.
He's gonna. It's just a matter of who he's going to lose to.
I'm wondering if one of the NDP MPs want to retire anyways, and he might swap out with them in a hyper safe riding just to hold on. I'm wondering, is he going to join? Is he going to take over Charlie Angus's riding?
How does he survive a leadership review? He doesn't. So what's the point? Why not get beat clean and then just walk away in the sunset with your pension? He's good to go.
Even in the 2021 leadership review, the post-2021 leadership review, might have been in 22 or 23, he got 79% of the vote. You think that should have already indicated that you're screwed? That 79% of people in an election where you technically gain seats, 79% of people only were willing to say that you should stay on. Leaders who fall below 90% should be terrified. And he was below 80. That was pathetic. Here's a good super chat from Chad Harris. He says, how do you guys feel about election reform? I personally can't stand that the election can be won essentially with Ontario and Quebec alone. I'm not a big election reform guy, and I would say that that's not quite accurate.
Well, one, okay. When the JCCF installs me as the rightful ruler of Canada with $3 billion votes I have, the Senate will be eliminated. Then there'll be a new Senate. The Senate will be representative of the people. Each province and territory will get 3 senators, and then the other 100 senators will be distributed by population. So there you have the balance of power. And then the rest of the country will actually go by full electoral balance on the system. And the senators, of course, will be elected and no longer appointed. And that's what we're going to do. I know that you don't like forced past the post voting system, but proportional representation, if that's what you're talking about, it's a bad thing. It leads to chaos and instability.
Look at the Netherlands, look at Israel, look at Spain.
You never get what you want. You're guaranteed to not get what you want. Just because some hard right parties can get in doesn't mean you'll ever get what you want, because you'll just get mishmash coalitions, and then you'll have centralization of power within central parties that can form sort of like pseudo crypto fascist, like government involved corporate. You become Europe.
Well, they have no nominations because everything's on a list system. So the guy who's like the really conservative guy is always going to be stuck at the bottom of the list. That unless they win 100% of the vote in the region, that guy's never going to get in, and they can play way more.
I don't think there's any reason to screw with the House of Commons. First past the post is fine if you have other chambers and other positions that balance it out. So you have the House. It does what the House does. The Senate represents the land, not the population. And then we could have an elected governor general that we could maybe denote some executive power to, or you could just make the position elected or elective. So like the Senate to me is, I when I was younger and more foolish, I thought the Senate's a cool idea because it's above politics. The problem is it requires the government to be honorable in the way that they use it. And we've now revealed with Trudeau that there's no honor left. And I don't know. The thing that scares me is that the Senate, the way it is, there's no reasonable expectation that they will continue the tradition of the senatorial role. They might actually actively oppose a Poilievre government the entire way, which to me would expose the system for what it is. The Senate should be elected. It should represent the land. The House represents the people, and that'd be okay. I think that's fine.
And that's the good balance. That's actually why America's.
America did it good. Those young men who made America, because they were young, like we call them the founding fathers. Most of them were in their 20s. Yeah. Like I think there was only a handful that were over 40. Like these were young guys, passionate guys, and they came up with the best we've ever done. And they did it by balancing they created different interlocking systems. I love it. Now it has its problems, but it's beautiful.
Because to get new states on board, like why would a Wyoming ever agree to become a state if you're going to get a House representative and no senator because you don't have a high enough population to justify it? You're only going to come on if you get your House representative. It's not a lot, but we also get 2 senators. And that's where you could say in Canada, we're all already joined together. But if you want to keep the country whole, or at least not resentful, because it shouldn't just be keeping it whole, that's your goal, because that's pretty shallow. I'm only going to do what keeps us from completely falling apart. But if you want to reduce resentment, make it so that PEI feels like it's in it a little bit more, that Alberta can actually have, in certain senses, Ontario has to actually care about what you think. To go back to that guy's thing, I would say, though, you can still win an election in theory without Ontario and Quebec, because when people say Ontario in this context, they're thinking Toronto. You can easily win outside the GTA. And in fact, I'd actually encourage the Conservative Party, really go for those traditional suburban middle-class voters that are rich in the Southwest, in the North. Win more of the Atlantic Canadian provinces by going socially conservative, because those voters are fiscally liberal because there's a lot of economic depression, mostly because of bad policy, but they're socially conservative voters. Maritime voters are where gender theory goes to die.
When I was looking at real estate for 2.5 years, trying to figure out where in this country I was going to land if I got the opportunity to leave Ontario, one of the things that stood out in my mind in the Maritimes was every single listing, there's crosses on every single wall. Like there are crucifixes everywhere. Like these are so I started looking into it more. And when you get west of Fredericton, there's this whole strip along the Trans-Canada Highway where there's all these people that live. They are ultra conservative people, and they vote in large numbers. And all around all the little cities in New Brunswick are these really conservative areas. The place that I almost moved was, get this, the Conservatives only got 5% of the vote. It was like a tie between the Greens and the Liberals. I mean, save me. There was no way I could actually move there. It was Sackville. I think it's Sackville, right along the Nova Scotia border. Yeah, very unique politics. I just couldn't do it. But yeah, I found that interesting. It just goes into what you're saying.
It's like Vancouver Island. Vancouver Island, oddly enough, is what I call a granola swing area. There's a reason why Elizabeth May's riding used to be an alliance reform riding. It wasn't like an alliance riding once. It was alliance from 93 to when it turned into when it was reformed from 93 to 9 and 97, and then it was alliance, and it was alliance again, and then it became, or not, it was alliance once, and then became conservative. And the only reason they ended up throwing out the conservative was I heard the guy was kind of a jerk, and so. But the attitude of the island is what I call a farmer's market granola attitude. They tend to vote anti-establishment, and there's a lot of actually socially conservative island voters. Same thing with the Maritimes. Tons of more older boomer type people who live in the Maritimes, so they are in favor of CPP number go up. At the same time, there's a reason why actually the Liberal candidate, who's now the premier of New Brunswick, unfortunately, she was the one having to run away from social issues the entire election because the parental rights stuff was actually extremely popular that Blaine Higgs passed. He just ran a bad fiscal campaign that gave people no confidence. So you never run on cutting taxes. If you're the incumbent, you cut taxes and you run on the fact you did cut taxes.
You really hit on something important with BC too. I think a lot of people misread BC. It's a lot more conservative than you would think by looking at how it's governed, and that's just underneath the surface now. Like it's on the cusp of coming out.
Yeah, and I'm helping the three I guess rebel MLAs from the BC Conservatives, because the BC Conservatives decided that we can do politics differently by doing it the exact same as the NDP and kicking people out for saying true things. And like literally that smear against Dallas Brody, if you saw it, was like a 2016 or actually more like 2010 style smear campaign that Andrew Breitbart would have been calling out at the time. It was such an obvious smear, and everyone just went along with it because it was just convenient to believe. And I don't actually think that many people believe it. So I think if those MLAs start speaking out and doing their own.
And you understand BC politics probably far better than I do. Is there a chance that Dallas Brody was a threat to Rustad?
No.
Within literally, the party? No, nothing like that?
Dallas was warning Rustad about the MLAs who actually want him gone, who are the woke MLAs who wanted her gone. They want Rustad to front getting rid of all the good MLAs, make himself look like mud, and then they can get rid of him saying, oh, he just made some leadership mistakes. And then they can put in an actual woke person from United in as the leader instead, like an Eleanor Sturko who attacked Comfort Sarcoma for being Christian effectively, who has been going around like yelling at conservatives behind the scenes. She's still harassing people even after the other three MLAs left. Still going around saying, you can't talk about Soji because I'm the lady who talks about Soji, because you're anti-gay if you talk about it, but I can because I am gay. Like nuts stuff going on behind the scenes still. Anyways, so here's a good question or a good comment from CGR902 for $2. The PPC is a good filter to catch all the woke right nuts. And I do agree that actually is a good utility right now for the PPC. All the guys who actually legitimately do believe in basically a right version of identity politics. So it keeps them from actually getting in the way of Poilievre.
They're like the right-wing Antifa.
Yeah.
They're really... the outspoken ones are so toxic and so virulent that it's just, where are you going? What's your plan? How are you building? How are you going to win people? Like, are you just going to insult your way to the top? Is that how this works? Because I'll tell you, you got to win elections. That's if you're going to play politics. Like, there's a reason I'm not involved in politics, because you have to at some level play the game. And I'm not really into that right now. Like you have to go into the city and you've got a campaign. If you can't win some urban ridings in this country with the House of Commons designed the way it is, you can't form a government. So you're not going to curse and swear your way into government. And doing American podcasts is probably a cell phone in Canada. It's not, I mean, Poilievre might have been able to get away with it, but I don't think it helps Bernier in any way. It might help him with donations, which is what it's all about. But I don't think it's going to help him build his base here at home. I think he's already got what he's going to get.
I know there's people who watch Patrick Bet David, and I know there's even been people in the comments saying, well, my take on this is off and whatnot. But it's like, guys, even if I doubt even 5% of his podcast are Canadians, it just stands to reason. We're a much smaller country. And then it's a guy mostly talk about American topics, and they're
American topics, American, and he just had Andrew Tate on. Like, you want to get caught in a sex trafficking type thing, like you might this and that, but like Andrew Tate's admitted to sex trafficking, and he's on video beating a 15-year-old
girl. Trash human being. I don't understand anybody's association with him. Sorry, Daniel. I just
no. Listen, we're all anti-sex trafficking, even when someone might support the same tax policy we do. And you think if the liberals, you think the liberals won't pounce on that, like, you know, and like, who are you? Like, again, are you know? Oh, Pierre Poilievre is on podcasts with a far right influencer said this and this, and then like they show Andrew Tate saying beat a bit, beat a blah, blah, blah. And people are gonna go like, what the hell is that? Yeah, like to some 14-year-old boys who are like really, you know,
do these people
bombarded with woke nonsense at school, like see that and go, yeah,
Patrick Bet David had this stupid idea that Trump only won the 2024 election because he went on a lot of podcasts. Did the podcasts help? Definitely. Did all the podcasts help? No, not really. Yeah.
How many Canadian podcasts did he go on?
I know. How many UK podcasts? If he did that,
how many did he do a European tour?
Yeah. He would have been accused of being not American if he went on too many not American podcasts. Even if the host wasn't American, it would kind of look bad after a while. So, but you do get Americans and people who watch too much American news who genuinely start to see America as a center of the universe. And it definitely is the most important country on the planet when it comes to the decisions that are made domestically and internationally. At the same time, like, let's not mistake that for politically effective in Canada. If 5% of PBD's audience is Canadian, guess what that gets Poilievre? A hill of beans. That is maybe 6,000 people. I get more numbers on an average video than that of Canadians watching, and I actually know what I'm talking about, or at least I hope I do. And then someone countered me one time and said, well, if Poilievre was on, tons of Canadians would watch. I'm like, again, yes. So there's no point. So he could literally go on a podcast with a guy who has 10 subscribers and people would watch. It doesn't matter. In fact, Harper did that recently. He went on someone's podcast that only had 500 subscribers, and that video ended up getting like 20,000 views because it was Harper. And if it only depends on if Poilievre does it or not, then it turns out that PBD is pretty useless when it comes to gaining audience share. I just want to get to this one. Lee D for $5 says GTA decides elections, period. If Poilievre goes hard right, he loses, and that's fact. I would disagree.
So it depends on what you describe as hard right. So if Poilievre goes to this like fringe right where it's like, you know, Israel killed JFK and I'm going to get to the bottom of it, then yes, he's going to lose. But if he goes like confident right on the issues that affect the GTA, right? Immigration numbers are too high, housing market collapsing, and economy. If he goes like solid right on good conservative principles, things that you want, like again, like, you know, immigration, you can do taxes, housing, inflation. If he goes solidly right on those issues, I actually think he can do quite well in GTA.
What about here's the thing. Doug Ford proved that it actually does work in 2018 when he was pretending to be conservative. He ran on an explicitly socially conservative, let's scrap the insane sex ed curriculum, and he did super well in the GTA. Because guess what?
Because
families live there.
These people, these new Canadians, they have greater, stronger family and cultural value systems in play than we do. They don't want their kids being brought up that they can change sexes like as easily as they can change a set of clothes. So that sells to them. And I know it sells to them because I used to talk to them all the time. So, I mean, even just moderate language on that issue and a commitment to not doing that to children would be that gets you some of those boroughs.
Yeah, and just saying that we're not going to give money or we're going to have some stipulations on provincial education money that the federal government transfers out, that it can't be going to DEI or gender theory nonsense, or we're going to put a hold on some of that, or we're going to claw it back. Easily a great referendum issue to kind of be running an election on. And
the gender theory stuff is not off-putting. It might not help you win like the Liberal versus NDP woke ridings, but against suburbs,
you ain't winning them anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's exactly my point. If you like again, people with families like families, parents like kids.
Yeah, we don't want our kids sexualized. I mean, that's fighting issues.
And that's a great debate issue too, because how you could easily call out Mark Carney and he'll be sputtering all over the place. He let his daughter go to the Tavistock Institute in London or the UK somewhere. That's insane. That's not something that Polyev should speak on. So it's actually good that Juno News put out that report. But again, in places where people like hate gender theory, which is the vast majority of the country, even if it's not, Polyev doesn't have to highlight it. If that report's out there, you're going to have a lot of people be like, wait, he let his daughter go somewhere where it got shut down for effective child abuse? Yeah. There's going to be a lot of tiger moms around the country saying, not voting for that guy. And
yeah, it's such an easy issue to run with.
It's one of those 80-20 issues where, and the funny thing is, you'll get called controversial for talking about it. Controversy is, in fact, oftentimes a good thing. It means it's something people are talking about.
It's what we've been talking about this whole time. When conservatives are quote unquote controversial and adversarial towards the media or liberal establishment, we make ground. We win. That's how you do it.
You know what? Smart Justin Trudeau play in 2015. Running on deficit spending was smart because guess what? No one else is doing it. Even on issues that are more down the middle of the road, like people could go either way, take the one that gets you attention. Because he was able to run on the idea that, see, these guys are talking about how to cut spending or save money for the government. I want to invest in you. It's economically illiterate. At the same time, it was generally kind of smart.
Oh, good. Stephen Harper said everything we've been saying about India-Canada relations. I said it today at a conference. He doesn't understand why we're fighting with India, and he says the Liberals are overrun with separatist activists who are trying to destroy the country. Thanks, Harper.
And that's the Conservative Party right now is being, lifted up by the kindness of strangers. The Liberals getting rid of Chandra, and Harper saying that the Liberals are overrun with Khalistani types. The Conservative Party should probably stop nominating those people, or they don't want the turnabout is fair play, and that's the problem. And I'm trying to save them from themselves. That's actually honestly, all three of us are the perfect people to be talking about this. All of our political brands over time have been trying to get people to trying to save people from themselves, making stupid decisions, saying, please don't do that because you're going to blow up. And then they do it and then they blow up and be like, I don't even feel good saying I told you so.
No, you get no pleasure in it. Like when I put that video together last Sunday, where I put together a compilation of all the debates that I did in 2019. So as I'm putting it together, I have to watch it back. I don't usually watch my own work back. Once it's done, I like to forget that I did it. I get a feeling whether it's good or not, and then I go forward. But I put it all together. I'm listening to my own words, and I'm like, here we are, 5 years later, 5.5 years later, and everything I said on that campaign trail, that's exactly where we are right now. And instead of feeling vindicated, like I'm so good, I was pretty depressed for a couple of days. I'm like, what good was saying it back then if we just ended up here anyway? And I was saying to my wife, I'm like, what good is knowing anything when you can't convince anybody of what you're saying? Like, that's the feeling that I got of. It's not, you don't feel good about it.
Oh, by the way, I watched a lot of that video, and I got to congratulate you on going to a debate of 300 environmentalist granola type voters in a room, taking the anti-alarmist position that no, CO2 is not the be all and end all of what the environment is, and actually getting them to clap for you. And I'm
shocked. I thought I was going to die that night. I thought I was going to get killed. I literally thought they were going to hang me from the rafters and just noose me right there. And instead, it resonated. They're sick of hearing about CO2.
It wasn't a room of people hooping and hollering as you're making your point. You would make a point, and then everyone would be like, it would be like kind of like out of nowhere clapping like that. Yeah. That's right. It wasn't.
They'd never heard it before.
It wasn't like PPC people stacking the room saying, "Yeah, Frank's right. Screw you."
Nope.
Not real. But thank you, Lynn Brooks, for the $5 super chat. I know you didn't attach a message to it, and I saw that you said that, but I'll try and get to something from you a bit later, or I'll remember on a different day that you did donate something, but we didn't read anything. Stefano, a hero of the channel, with a $69.99 super chat. Appreciate you guys. Pierre is a masterclass politician. Carney is a political rookie. Conservatives have tons of cash. Pierre wins debates and destroys Carney in the French debate. Pierre will win a majority government. Well, you are the hyper
Inshallah.
optimist tonight. Yes, inshallah. I do still think the Conservatives are going to win a government. I even think that if they win a government, it's more likely to be majority than minority at this point. And you're right. People forget the Conservatives have like 30 million on hand. What do the Liberals have? The Liberals have gotten a bit of a cash injection from this leadership race, but we're talking in the realms of like $5 million altogether. Both
They got Amarjeet Soji coming back.
Yeah. Do they?
Yeah, apparently that was the rumor today.
Oh yeah,
John Darius out, Amarjeet Soji's out. Out with the Hindu guy, in with the big Khalistani. That will help you in the GTA. Again, huge Hindu ridings in the GTA, which is the swing riding area.
He's actually running in Edmonton because he's the Edmonton mayor. So I think he's almost there to run interference for Carney. That even if he doesn't run, it kind of girds up the Liberals a little bit in the Edmonton area. But Marco Peruza says tuning in late. Does Poilievre still have a shot? Carney's gaining ground with MS Media, IMO, but those April 2 tariffs should change things. I think that, and I'm not sure if you commented on it, Frank, but I think that the endorsement that Trump gave to the Liberals is going to haunt them. The Conservatives even ran the advertisement I was advising them to run 1-to-1. I'm not talking to them, but in videos where they were getting like literally 150,000 views, I was saying, show Carney falling all over himself at that Nunavut press conference when he was asked about Trump, then cut to Trump saying, I can work better with the Liberals, and then just say, yeah, this guy can't negotiate with them. And it will do so well. I think that is going to start pushing the Liberals down in the polls, and the polls I actually do follow still have the Conservatives up. If this is high watermark for the Liberals, they're dead. If they were already behind 4 or 5 points and then they start receding, now we're just deciding what kind of government it's going to be for the Conservatives.
Yeah, I really hope it's not a Conservative minority. I can't imagine a worse possible outcome than that. Them having to govern with the Bloc, because the Bloc's going to come out of this very strong, while they're negotiating with Donald Trump on the other side. Like, it'll just collapse and we'll be back at the polls.
One of my the only thing I would say about a minority, the only silver lining I could see is if it ended up exposing a bunch of the mistakes the Conservatives made in their campaign, and it said, next time we have to stop doing that. I mean,
good news, $100 million to Palestine.
The wrong things, you know what I mean? That you won the minority because you did some stuff wrong, and now to get the majority, you got to clean it up. That would be the only silver lining I would see in a minority government situation, that you're only going to be in it for a year and a half, and then you get to a majority after that, after you've proven that you can make it work. Finally, you stop rigging nominations for crappy candidates, kicking people like me out who are working hard, and instead jamming people in who are not actually caring. VSK $6.99 super chat. Thank you, VSK. And Lee D $2. How bad would it hurt Carney to not debate versus debate? I think he's gone if he doesn't debate, because he's got to do it. He has to. There's no way you can avoid a debate. In America, there's so much media propaganda helping justify why Joe Biden didn't want to do a second debate and all that stuff, that enough people on your side can be convinced that he's not a coward. But even Kamala Harris and Joe Biden had to debate once.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, that Kamala Harris-Trump debate is a masterclass in why you need to be interesting. Harris, from stupid college debate club rules, won. At the same time, nobody remembered a single thing she said in that entire debate.
Yeah.
I
think if we're talking the debate, should we add this super chat? Let's add this one to it, because we're talking debate. Is there a chance Carney will avoid the debate, or the CBC will help him if the debate happens with leaking questions? What about security clearance topic? Yeah, security clearance, it's even Tom Mulcair's on that. I think the interesting thing is, will the CBC leak him the questions? And I think 70% chance, yes. 70, 80%, I'd say, yeah, that's going to happen.
Rosemary Barton will do it herself and have an apology note attached to it.
Rosemary,
she's in the tank for CPC. What are you talking about? She's in the tank.
Yeah.
She's a Poilievre booster.
Yeah. But yeah, here's the thing too, with the CBC or with whoever they have the debate with, Poilievre should probably want to debate once or twice. Probably not 3 or 4 times, because you don't want Carney getting his sea legs, figuring out what you do, and then tripping you up once or twice. probably one debate's good, but what, French and then English. In the English debate, what Polyev, in my opinion, needs to do, and you guys can have your own takes on what his goal is. I think what he needs to do is get Carney talking. You know what I mean? He sucks at talking. Get this guy answering a somewhat complicated question and have it be like a hot potato you throw him. Not something too obvious where he probably has a binder page that covers that topic. Give him a question, then have a twist on it. And I guarantee he starts stammering, repeating himself. He is pure word salad given a question he doesn't expect.
How do people get to that stage in their careers, whether they're financial careers or political careers? That guy's got a lot of gray hair. I don't know how old he is. I haven't looked it up. How do you maintain yourself as a stuttering mess into that? Like, how do you sit down with a camera, record yourself talking, and then watch it back and see where you screw up? Do you blink too much? Do you stutter too much? Do you have too many ahs and ums in there? And then practice getting rid of it. And within a couple of days, you'll be a much more effective speaker. How do these guys get to this state in life and not know how to talk?
You're actually
I was a stuttering mess in grade 7 and I fixed it. I'm not a natural speaker. It's discipline that turned me into someone who can talk, right? Why don't they do that?
You're actually so right about that. When the first day I ever went door knocking was intimidatingly enough, I was door knocking for my nomination super early on, just seeing what the litmus test was out there. Do people want somebody new? Because the current guy hadn't even said he's not running. I could just detect he wasn't going to run because he was like 71, 72 years old, and that's pretty old in Canadian politics. And the thing that got me way better at talking was, one, door knocking, because you're talking to constantly new people, constantly practicing an introduction. But two, just record yourself talking without making mistakes for 20 minutes. Once you can get through 20 minutes without doubling back and repeating yourself a bunch of times, if you can get a solid minute out and you get all your points across and then you just start flow speaking, that's great. And I think most of people's problems speaking in public is because out of a genuine fear they're going to mess up, because you probably are going to mess up. So get good at just not messing up in front of yourself. Videos that nobody's ever going to see, but can you record yourself for 20 minutes making a point without a script? And I think that will make you way more confident. Where you can tell Carney is used to sitting on panels at the WEF where someone throws a word salad question at them and they can say word salad things back and then pass it off to someone else sitting on the panel if they don't know what to say. He has always been sitting. His leadership race was all training wheels the entire time. He has never ridden a bike without training wheels. And I think that Polyev needs to exploit that in debate.
Yeah, for sure.
Someone else had a good question here that they're throwing in. Sorry, we already went over that one. Thank you for VS as well for that follow-up on the debates. Marco Peruza for $2 says, can't see the Liberals getting 40-plus seats in Ontario. And I think the main problem, and you weren't on the show when we were previously talking about this, Frank, but when you even looking at the polls where the Conservatives are behind or it's tight, the problem that the Liberals have is that their voters are far less confident they're definitely going to show up and vote Liberal, where Conservative voters, it's like 2/3 are definitely showing up. That was the Angus Reid poll that put the Liberals ahead by 5 points. If you took the Conservative sample, 2/3 are definitely showing up. With the Liberals, only 49% were definitely showing up. So there's a big chance that a lot of Liberals swing back and say, yeah, Carney is kind of just like Trudeau. And I think the big stumbling block for the Liberals has been men, because the Liberal Party doesn't respect men at all. Working class men with trades jobs are the block of voters who are radically going to come out for the Conservatives. No electrician is going to vote for Carney. And before I pass to you guys, I want to play this clip that's been going around of Carney on a construction site. Look at the men who are sat there next to him for his speech and what their facial expressions look like, even from this far away.
All right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this announcement. And those who are visiting us, welcome to Edmonton, Alberta's capital city, and the city of festivals. And so, good afternoon. And today,
this is supposedly a city where Mark Carney is hoping to pick up seats. And these guys look like they were forced to stand in front of the class because they were caught, late after lunch not coming into school. So they're forced to sit by the teacher at the front.
Yeah, I mean, contrive to the max, go stand there, and then try to, basically you can't hide the fact that you have no respect for the person that you're standing behind. Like the open expressions of scorn on all of their faces.
And as Mike Trainer says here, the workers behind Polyev are always smiling. Yeah, they look like they're having a good time. And this is the thing with Trump as well in the 24 presidential election. Trump was having fun on the campaign trail. Kamala Harris looked like she was a nervous bureaucrat going through an event that she didn't want to be at. And we even know that she had to practice the most basic of events because she was just that bad. And that's one of those things where that's where Polyev and the conservatives, not just that they need a big, audacious vision to run on, because that's what wins elections, a really big, bright, optimistic vision that actually purports wanting big change without just saying big change. But it's also having fun. Make fun of Carney. Call him, Mark's Carney. Call him, something like that. Just do something that ends up stealing attention. And I think that that's what the Conservative Party needs to not be too afraid of right now. That's one area where they're going soft. I think they're concerned that a Polyev controversy sinks them. I really don't think that's what sinks them. If anything, it's the circling the wagons that's the problem right now.
Yeah, because he's at his best when he's swinging for the benches. Like he's a very effective speaker. He's just got to unleash his tongue.
Yeah. I like Sloan said, he should just slip out one time. He's like Mr. Burns. Rusted at one point agreed with Chip Wilson, the guy who founded Lululemon in Vancouver. He was calling EB a communist, and at one point, Rusted agreed with Chip Wilson. Said, "Oh, I agree. EB is a communist." Their media team got mad at Rusted for doing that. I was having their media comms people texting me saying, "Stop calling EB a communist on X. Stop doing that." I'm like, it's funny though. It's funny. Let funny things happen. I even told them, know what you should tell Rusted to do? If he gets asked at a press conference, well, you called David Eby a communist. Do you have any proof he's a communist? Just say, oh, I guess I don't. I don't have any evidence he's a capitalist either. And then move on. It's funny.
Yeah, the conservatives trip up when they start thinking that things that aren't big deals are actually big deals. Like they want to get the right answer. They want to deliver it just perfect, or they want to deliver it in a way that the audience that they can't get, that they can't appeal to anyway, they want to, they want to thread that needle, and you can't do that. You have to you got to constantly be at them and be funny. I mean, Trump's hilarious. I mean, watching, I can't believe we get the next 4 years of watching that entertainment happening down there, because going to those, that silly dance that he does. I mean, it's such a meme. It's such a simple thing, but such a meme. Him swinging the sword at the I can't remember what military ball it was.
It's like the inaugurational ball.
Yeah. Was it inaugurational ball? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Did you see that, Daniel?
Yeah. No. Yeah. He also gave.
It's just hilarious. It's so funny.
Back in the day.
And any Canadian conservative consultant would have had an aneurysm over him dancing. It's silly. People are making fun of it.
You gotta live. You gotta look alive. You can't be a walking corpse in a suit. You have to show that you're average. You're an everyman. You have to just live. You know what I mean? A little bit of what you are behind closed doors has to come out.
Yeah, Polyev needs to demonstrate like that. Oh, not that he's human. I think everyone knows he's very much a human compared to Mark Carney, but he needs to be on the ground making out content that he's sitting down and actually speaking to average people, and not in this contrived way. I mean, like, have a campaign team film him going door to door, doing door knocking for hours a day, demonstrating, one, he's actually doing on the ground work because he cares. And then two, you get great little candid moments of him telling a joke here or doing something there, or have a big rally where he's actually like, be self-deprecating almost. People always say that he looks like Milhouse from The Simpsons, and then he can get a good line off that, well, if I'm Milhouse, then he's Mr. Burns.
Yeah.
But now we're just at the point of this stream where we're spitballing. Maybe this is probably a good time to wrap it up. We've gone through all the super chats because I don't like ending stuff if I haven't answered one of those, obviously. But thanks for coming on, Frank. This has been great having you. I should have you back at some point to talk more about the border issues and whatnot. Ooh, that's not the right. That's not the right link. That was a link to a random tweet I had. I want to link everyone to Frank's channel. So guys, go check out him. He has really great in-depth videos, both on the PPC recently, as well as like foreign policy stuff about the border. And no one else is making content like that. And
You're going to love me until I say something you don't like. Then you're going to hate me.
That's not true. We would probably disagree a lot on foreign policy, but we can
we can debate you on Ukraine.
You're not even part of that metric, because, and that's one of the things I like about you guys, is there's no personal absolutism. We can have a conversation, which is what we need more than anything. We need to have conversations, period.
Mm-hmm. Now that I'm saying I'm ending it, that's exactly when people start sending in more super chats. Marco Perusa says, if you advise Pierre Poilievre, would you push affordability or go after Trump in his campaign message? Can a big tech bro endorsement boost him like Elon plus Trump? I actually think that would hurt him, which is why it hurt the liberals for Trump to basically indicate Carney's so weak, I'd like to negotiate with him. Also on that too, I would say that what I would tell Poilievre to do, and you guys are probably going to agree because you guys probably have the same opinion, Poilievre should go after the liberals for having weakened the country so much that the Americans can push you around. I would have said these guys were the ones who left the door unlocked. They're the ones who let the criminals into the shop. I'm going to be the one who shuts the gate, and I'm going to actually negotiate on Canada from a position of strength. And I would just even say that's why Doug Ford folded within 24 hours of his threat on electricity tariffs, because he's so broke he can't afford a 50% steel tariff.
No.
Yep. No, I'm 100% with you on that. Like it seems easy to me, because the last 10 years is just it's an endless well of material that you can draw off of these people destroying and undermining this country, and then you can present a plan for getting it back.
Mm-hmm.
Seems easy.
And I like the angle of calling out fake patriotism. The people who hated the Canadian flag when it was being used as a symbol for freedom suddenly like it as something to wield against the Americans. At the same time, these are the same people. It's almost like they're only offended at Trump for the tariffs. And I don't like the tariffs, but they're only offended at Trump because it's their job to kick Canadians in the face. Yeah,
ruining Canada's economy is our job. You stay away from that.
Yeah. We make our tax rate over 50%, not you. Here's Chad Harris, $2 super chat. Thank you, Chad. Here's another super chat to keep you hostage, Wyatt. See, my point was proven. $5 from Paul Poco. How do I get my wife to vote conservative? She keeps saying Carney was a banker to her friends on the phone. Just say that he literally had nothing to do, because it's true, with us surviving the 2008 market crisis. It was, and he
instigated that. He was part of the financial crisis in Europe. Like Europe became a financial mess, and he ran the Brexit. How's the UK doing? They're caught between a rock and a hard place.
And this is also part of my thing calling him Marx Carney. There is an element of truth to the idea that in the Soviet Union, who do you think the accountants looked like in the government? Most communists didn't look like Stalin or Trotsky with their big rhetoric and militancy. It was mostly middle management bureaucrats with ledgers telling you how much of a material you could make, how much labor you have to use, what your quotas are, how fast does it have to be done, and all this crap. That was.
Paul, let me try this rhetorical angle on you, right? And conservatives can listen to this. Is your best just like Justin argument is what would you say if Justin Trudeau got up in front of the country and said, "Guys, we're not going to be spending anymore. We're going to be investing." No one would believe him. We'd all know it's just more spending. But when Mark Carney comes up and says it in a suit, we're tricked by the banker aesthetic, but he's still trying to sell you the same snake oil. So I would ask her, if Justin Trudeau said that we're not going to be spending any more money, we're going to be investing in Canada, you'd see through that. But a good angle
too is that when Carney was just following orders with Harper and Flaherty, he was doing a good job, because he is not a leader, he is a follower. And when he was calling his own shots in Europe, when in fact, as the central banker, usually you're only supposed to be trying to assist the government in achieving their policy goals. He started saying, well, you better do what I say or I'm going to quit and blame you guys for all the problems. And they were dumb enough to go along with what he had to say. And the UK's economy is crap. It's just pure garbage right now. And like he helped, kick off a lot of economic weakness around Europe from his policies that he implemented in the UK.
But he can skate and arguably play hockey, at least with some competence.
That's another one of those things. Never do anything sports related as a politician unless you're a spectator.
What do you mean? Vladimir Putin played in the Russian KHL All-Star game. He got like a hat trick.
All the goals.
Yeah, he's a better goal scorer than Ovechkin.
It was definitely contrived, but I got to say Putin looks better in a hockey uniform than Carney does. It's a little bit more convincing.
Well, with the Carney, you had him taking that slap shot that like misses by a mile.
It wasn't a snap
He was
shot.
going for the
snap.
top corner and he
He
flubbed it.
flicked it. He tried to flick the top corner and missed.
Here's the thing. Would I have hit it? No. I also wouldn't have gone on the ice. The thing is that what you do is, does anyone remember? I think it was a guy running for premier or maybe he was prime minister. It was like the 60s or 70s, like early 70s, late 60s. It was a liberal politician, and he used to be like a CFL quarterback or something like that. I forget who it was. I've just seen the photo, and I remember the lesson being taught a couple times in some classes. And he's just throwing a football back and forth, like going long, like great spiral, always catching it. And then when the camera clicked, he dropped it. And he's like, they're doubled over, like the dumbest looking guy can't pick up the football. And it actually ruined his approval ratings because everyone looked at him as like some sort of dweeb. And he kind of went like horseshoe bald, so he already looks like your math teacher. So it looked like your fumbling math teacher can't even catch a ball. And the guy was just making perfect arcs the entire time up to that point. Yeah.
Okay. So back to Carney for a minute. Maybe you guys can answer this question. What was he doing at an Edmonton Oilers practice? What was that?
I think he's doing stuff. He's around Edmonton with Amarjeet Soji, some sort of shady backroom deals.
So the Oilers thought it was a good idea to put him in a uniform and let him skate around with the team. They thought that was good.
And the thing is, like, if it was Trudeau, I get it. He's been prime minister for 9.5 years. He was elected in his own right. I don't like the guy, but he was elected. This guy was not really elected to anything. The liberal leadership race was as rigged as the country music charts or the WWE, in the sense that it was just that the
Have you ever seen such statistical consistency in your life?
That they made sure that Freeland does a little bit better in University Rosedale. Like she only gets 11% in her own home riding. She got 8% on average, and she somehow literally there's no, and that I give Ezra a lot of credit for going on that limb and looking into it. And he actually put it into Grok, fed all the information and says, how likely is this to actually be a real election result in all 343 ridings? And it said 2% chance that this is what an election will look like. If Bayless gets 3%, Gould gets 3%, and Chrystia Freeland gets 8%, and he gets whatever he got, how likely would the spread look like this? And it's like, not a chance. But
they raised a lot of cash. Like they raised a lot of cash. So where'd that it just doesn't make sense.
No, and they're not giving Ruby Dalla her money back either. They probably never gave Chandra Arya his money back either. And
thank you for your service. Now you're out of the party.
Yeah. And what's very suspicious? Frank Bayless and Karina Gould and Chrystia Freeland, they all basically raised the same amount of money. They all raised like $400,000. They all raised barely enough money to get into the race, and that's it, because that's all they needed to do. Anyways, so Mario Pruser says, if it goes south, does Pierre Poilievre stay or get ousted? I think any leader who doesn't beat the Liberals always gets ousted, pretty much.
Yeah, but where does the Conservative Party go after Poilievre? I mean, he's the golden one. He's the chosen man. What direction do they go in if they turf him? I'm not arguing with you. It's just I've been thinking about that. If
that's a good point,
fails and he's out, where do they go?
That's a good point, because I'm just thinking that'd actually be a really dangerous time to be in, because
before you even form a government,
the Red Tories would have not a correct. They wouldn't be correct, but they would have a good narrative to say, see, he ran to the right and he lost. We need another O'Toole type. And then you're in the woods again with a leader that you maybe don't even want to win. Because I would say the best thing that ever happened to the Conservative Party was Aaron O'Toole losing, or else
For sure.
he wins a slim minority government if things just if the marble rolls down the right hole and it maybe is snowing in all the Liberal ridings, but it's sunny and shiny in all the ridings where the Conservatives are trying to get their people out. He wins a minority government. What happens? In a year and a half, Trudeau comes back and says, look, O'Toole couldn't even get anything done, even though obviously he wasn't going to get anything done. And he was running on nothing. He was running on no change. And then Trudeau gets back in for a full 4-year majority again. The Conservatives needed to lose that 21 election or everything would have gone pear-shaped inside the party. It's like why Ford winning and becoming the Premier of Ontario with these absolute loser Liberal and NDP leadership opponents of him. It's the worst thing that ever happened to the PC party because it has affirmed the dumbest form of soft, red Tory, basically liberal politics. Because, oh man, the guy keeps winning. Who couldn't beat Del Duca? Who couldn't beat Andrea Horwath and Merritt Stiles and Kathleen Wynne and Bonnie Crombie? These people are like TV politicians in the sense that if you were making a TV movie about politics and you just needed some guy to play a character as a political leader, you'd pick a guy who looks like Del Duca. It's just, we're not trying too hard in this film. We're not trying to find someone who actually looks like you'd vote for him. He's a background character. He's running against nobody, so of course he wins.
Well, 55% of the electorate stays home because they just don't feel motivated to go to the poll.
Yeah, I think it was even worse with last time. It was like 43% of people voted. It's
terrible.
Absolutely pathetic.
Yeah.
That's why I tell people to vote for the new Blue Party. Well, he's not going to win. They're not going to win, Wyatt. And this is my thing. I've never slagged the PPC for not winning. It's that they don't try to win. The new Blue Party tries to win. And I even flew in on my own expense, paid my own hotel just to help on the ground because, it's the right thing to do if you have time on your hands. Taz 2070 for $5 says, hey Wyatt, I was at the Sudbury rally yesterday. The place was packed and the enthusiasm was remarkable, especially in a Liberal stronghold. In fact, I think, isn't that like a NDP stronghold? Like the Sudbury area is very like public sector union-y where.
But listen, doing a rally in Sudbury is in Northern Ontario. I don't hate it. It's not a bad place to do a rally, and it's good that there's momentum in Northern Ontario. Northern Ontario is either Conservative or NDP. But listen, Sudbury is like a mining town, and Polyev can flip a mining town because the NDP used to be a party for the workers, and workers, in order to be workers, need to have jobs. In order for there to be jobs, there have to be industry, and some of the industries are not woke enough, mining specifically. So I think there's enough people in that riding who sees Jagmeet as a existential threat to their livelihood. So it's not
So I think the Conservatives just, and I think that if I was running the Conservative Party, I would be telling them to target North Ontario, tons of private sector union workers who hate the NDP and the Liberals these days. Again, those men who can't vote Liberal or NDP anymore. And then I'd be telling them to go to Southwest Ontario, go to the cities that have big suburban populations who hate blanket rezoning that the Liberals have been pushing around the country. That's another big issue. Oppose blanket rezoning. Yeah.
Just keep Melissa Lansman running around the GTA.
Yeah, she's fine doing that. And tell Tim Uppel and Just Raj Halan to stay at the ridings and talk to nobody.
Yeah, have them hang out with Justin Trudeau in a bunker 6 feet underground.
Have them go map out where the new Canadian military base in Iqaluit should be.
Exactly.
So anyways, that's truly it for us, guys. We'll see you all later. We'll definitely have Frank on again some point. I'll definitely force Daniel to come on with me more often. It's mostly my fault. I keep not inviting him. But see you guys all later, and go check out, again, Frank's channel, which I'll throw once more time in the chat. Until next time.
Like and subscribe.